The Associated Press has decided that it is not appropriate to refer to protests as protests. Well, because, there's been a bit of violence. But they don't want to call them riots, so the AP new guideline says to call it unrest. And a lot of people are kind of upset about it. They're saying that's ridiculous. Just call them riots. I don't know. I actually kind of agree because you can lump the protests and the riots together by calling it unrest and still call it riots when they're explicitly riots. Now, we're entering in the final stretch for the presidential debate. Donald Trump is up on stage. He's saying, stand back and stand by. And the whole media erupts the Proud Boys. And you've got ongoing riots. You've got threats of more violence and more riots over the nomination and potential or likely confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett. Plus, the election is going to be absolute chaos. So, you know what? I think for once, y'all have listened to me talk way too much because we have right now the DC Riot Squad. And I'll just let you guys introduce yourselves. So you go here.
All right, I'll start. Thank you. I'm Shelby Talcott. I work for the Daily Caller. I'm a media reporter and field correspondent. So we've been out on the ground covering all these riots and protests, whatever you choose to call them, all the unrest this year, and we'll continue to do so. So all three of you have been everywhere, every single one of these major events. You guys want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, so I'm Jorge Ventura, a field reporter with the Daily Caller. Same thing as kind of Shelby. We've been covering the civil unrest. I could actually call Shelby my partner in crime now, officially. So yeah, just been covering the civil unrest. Been on the field, kind of providing the audience a real kind of an in-depth look at the riots. Most of the time when you're watching the news, they'll stay out there till like 7-8 p.m. and then they'll go, reporters go right back to their hotel, and then you don't see what happens after that. So I think a really good thing that we've done at the Caller is we've been able to provide you guys like the full story, from the daytime, from after 8 into the late hours like 2 a.m. So I think we've done a really good job, and so far it seems like Americans are really appreciating the coverage.
And you both got arrested.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. And then, but Richie, you're here too. So they're fighting over a microphone right now because we can.
Yeah. I wasn't arrested though.
You weren't arrested.
Yeah, I was not.
Just these two.
No. I'm Richie McGinnis. I'm the chief video director at the Daily Caller. And yeah, basically when all this stuff started, Jorge and Shelby were in DC. I was actually in New York. And once all of the unrest started around the country, as the video director, I saw a real opportunity for our team to actually go to these protests and cover them authentically, tell the full story, talk to the protesters, the rioters, law enforcement, and also the people who are cleaning up the community the day afterwards. So really trying to tell the full story.
Aren't you the guy who gave first aid to that dude in Kenosha?
I am.
That's crazy, dude.
Wow.
So even before we started, you guys were about to get ready into you're about to get into these stories, and I'm like, stop telling me stories until we turn the camera on. So look, I used to go on the ground for all this stuff, and it's escalated. I was in a couple places where there were active gunshots and stuff. You guys have been all over the place as it's been going on for months, and is likely going to get crazier. So we'll talk all about this. And I'm just going to throw it to you guys, and we'll get started with wherever you want. We've got some news relative to Donald Trump and Proud Boys. Vice is apparently issuing a statement. It's kind of funny. But before we get into all that, make sure you smash the like button, subscribe. We do the show Monday through Friday live at 8 p.m. And hang out. We're just gonna talk about it. We got a big crew here. But I guess I'll put it this way, man. I got really angry today when I was reading about all of these stories that are desperate to claim Donald Trump refuses to denounce white supremacy. And so they do this clever trick where they're like, Donald Trump refuses to denounce white supremacy. Donald Trump tells Proud Boys, stand back and stand by, creating like this manipulation in media where they're trying to make you think the Proud Boys are a white supremacist group. And so what I always say is like, look, man, the Proud Boys are a lot of things. And you can criticize them, but they're not a white supremacist group. The media is desperate to play that up. So the first thing I want to ask, as the leftist narrative and the media narrative tends to be, that it's actually right-wing militias and right-wing groups that are starting all the violence. Now, look, I got to be honest. I've only, for the most part, watched your videos to get a sense of what's going on the ground. So let's hear it from you guys. Is it really right-wing groups that are secretly starting all the riots?
No. And I think a really good example of this, actually, a New York Times article just came out, I think it was today, and a photographer, I believe it was, wanted to go undercover to confirm that right-wing militias and extremists were starting this violence, and he actually found the exact opposite.
They published that.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah,
I'm
it
impressed.
came out today, and I think we've seen that too. You look at Portland, you look at Seattle, you look at some of these other areas that we've been to, and it is very clearly not right-wing militias starting the violence. I mean, all you have to do is go out there later than 9 p.m., 10 p.m. and see it for yourself and talk to these people. They're definitely not pro-Trump. They're definitely,
It's absurd to imply that. Like, it's crazy to me that you guys can pump out hours of videos every time you go to these places, but then you have low information, I guess, I call them low information culture war belligerents. There are people who are online screaming like, we're right, you're wrong. It's actually right-wingers doing it. And I'm like, the only videos I see are like leftist black bloc people and Black Lives Matter going around throwing bricks and starting fires. Yet for some reason, you see all these people on Twitter. I wonder if it's just they know they're lying and they have to. Because, I mean, if they admitted what was really going on with left-wing violence, they'd lose.
Yeah, I think it's a mistake. It's like, I think when people see an image of someone in like militia gear, they just automatically assume they're like a Trumper or on the right. And like Shelby was saying, and actually I was kind of even shocked myself when we actually interview these people. These people are actually on the side of the protesters. They're not even on the right at all.
You mean like the Boogaloo Boys and stuff?
Yeah. So a lot of these folks are not even, don't even consider themselves like Republicans. A lot of these folks consider themselves like libertarians and kind of want to like I don't want to say overthrow the system, but obviously want less laws and stuff like that. So that's one thing that me and Shelby kind of learned on the ground, covering this stuff in different cities too.
But I mean, that's referencing these instances where there have been Boogaloo Boys. I mean, for the most part, it's just black bloc, far left people, right? Like most of the places you've been to.
Yeah, I mean, and Richie and I went to Seattle for Chaz, the autonomous zone, and that was definitely not right-wing people, I would say, but everyone had guns there, and everyone, it was upon first impression, maybe you think that because of what people would assume about each side, but it's just a false narrative.
I mean, didn't they pump like hundreds of rounds into a pickup truck and killed 2 kids? Or no, one of them died.
Yeah, there were 3 shootings, I believe, in Chaz at different times, and did 2 kids die? 2 people died?
It was 2 kids, yeah.
Yeah.
And then
the other, while reporting in Seattle, a lot of these, to get into Chaz, they had like armed security. And then, while we were there, I was actually able to get one to did a quick interview with me. He wouldn't do it on camera, but I was like, who's responsible for this stuff? And they're like, oh, we're with the John Brown Gun Club. That was the first time I've ever heard. I'm like, the John Brown Gun Club.
That's like a left-wing militia.
And it's a left-wing militia. So right there, I was like, oh, okay, these guys are, about the Second Amendment stuff, obviously when it comes to them. But that was the very first time I've ever heard anything about that. Then I've heard, that name John Brown Gun Club, pop up multiple times after our trip in Seattle.
That's crazy that like they would take the name John Brown Gun Club and then now it's like associated with like Marxists and communists or whatever. Did you wanted to jump in, Richie?
Yeah, I mean, actually, to be fair though, while we were in the Chaz, Shelby and I did film a video of a couple of Proud Boys, 4 Proud Boys beating up a guy pretty badly.
Really? Why were they there?
Well, basically, we were covering these folks who were bringing in flag, and they
an American flag.
That's right.
So their security were the Proud Boys, and after the flag bearers left, I basically said to Shelby and I were like, well, the Proud Boys are still here. And as they were on their way out, an individual went up, and we were a little ways back, so we didn't see the initial confrontation that caused it. But we did run up right as the brawling was starting, and I mean, you can see the video on Twitter. It's pretty brutal. It's a pretty brutal beating they gave the guy.
Wow.
It was like 6-5 versus 1, 6 versus 1.
And actually,
Whoa.
a couple of the Proud Boys were armed, and at one point in the video, it looks like the guy who's getting beaten actually is leaning for the gun. And that's the kind of situation where I'm looking like, do I have to form tackle Shelby, and are we going to hit the deck here?
Well, so
as she shakes her head,
as the Proud Boys are basically the biggest story right now. I can't believe Joe Biden decided to shout that out at the debate because I immediately got messages from friends. They were like, "What's a Proud Boy?" And I kid you not, some people think it's like an LGBTQ thing. Like for real, like it was a joke from Gavin McInnes. It was meant to be silly. Now it's this like legit thing that gets shouted out. And now they're like the big story. So let me ask you guys, out of all of the riots you've been to, you mentioned, in the Chaz shop, whatever, there was an instance where the Proud Boys beat some dude pretty bad. Has there been anything else you've seen across the country? I mean, like not like actually just, you guys can answer. Just leave it there.
That I think is the only example that we've seen of the Proud Boys really inserting themselves into a situation like that. Richie went to a Proud Boys rally last weekend, and I think the police did a pretty good job of keeping. Was there even like Antifa there? Or
Well, there was a counter protest, which actually was much, much larger by a magnitude of at least 5.
Wow.
Which was just a couple miles away, but it was a really big park. And so, unlike there was a kind of a Proud Boys rally downtown in August, which got pretty violent, which we weren't present for. But that was where Antifa and the Proud Boys, whatever the prayer group, they were clashing.
Was that Patriot Prayer? Or was that really
Patriot? Well, I don't really know exactly.
Riots.
It's hard to tell. It was run by the Patriot Prayer, but there were definitely some people in there who identified as Proud Boys. But this weekend it was explicitly Proud Boys. There were Patriot Prayer people there as well, but it was almost entirely peaceful. There was a very small little physical altercation where they were basically asking the press who they were on the way in, and they were forcing out some Antifa press.
Oh, I see.
Whatever that means. I mean, obviously there's no credentials that say Antifa press, so I'm not sure the validity on that, but there was a small confrontation. But I'd say, other than those 2 instances, no, we haven't seen anything.
That was even, I would say, like, that was a Proud Boys rally, so it wasn't an example of the Proud Boys, going into a protest or a riot and trying to, change the direction of things.
Or even start a riot.
Yeah. Yeah,
well, even the main thing, the reason why the Proud Boys are even coming up again is because the violence has gone so bad in these cities. Now, this is not me saying, this is from folks that I've interviewed in the Proud Boys. What they've told me is just, the violence is getting so bad in the cities, they feel like they have to come in there and like restore law and order, or at least show other Americans, hey, we stand with law and order. We want this to be restored to how it was. So that's the big thing that I've been picking up, is they feel like they got to come in and kind of, just restore something back. What happens, I don't know.
They declared victory in Portland. So, I mean, first of all, we should probably describe what the Proud Boys are, because like we're sitting here acting like I can straight up say nobody knows who the Proud Boys are. Joe Biden brings them up, and then I'm just operating under the assumption everybody listening.
Yeah.
So they're Western chauvinists. They're basically a mixed bag of politics. They're nationalists. And they have previously had violence as a core function of what their group was in terms of their degrees. Do you guys know all the degrees? I know the first. So basically, to join the Proud Boys, first there's like you go to a chapter and you make an announcement that you're not going to apologize for creating the Western world, something to that effect. The second degree, I think, is that you get beat up, they punch you, while you name 5 breakfast cereals. It's because it was a joke. It wasn't a real, like, you know what I mean? Like, this is not an actual like gang or something,
like
whatever. So then I don't know what the third one is. It might be getting a tattoo or something. But then I remember the 4th degree, like the highest rank or whatever, was getting into a fight defending Western values. So there was actually a component where if they went out and Antifa started a fight and they fought somebody, then they got a rank up or something. So they've been, the media likes to very, like, they give no favors to the Proud Boys. So they give favors all day, at least in my experience, to Antifa. Like, Antifa doesn't exist. It's just an idea. And then you get the Proud Boys, and it's like, well, they're far-right extremists, neo-Nazi white supremacists, alt-right white nationalists, like every name in the book. They endorse violence, and they're hunting people down. In fact, they're responsible for all of the violence. Like, I was reading CBS today, and they said, the Proud Boys, comma, a white supremacist group, comma, and I'm like, that's just ridiculous. Like, you got to get your facts straight, man. And this is what really, I hope it's clear to everybody listening, like, if you guys have no problem saying, oh man, the Proud Boys beat up some guy really bad, like, you're giving us the honest take. You're not protecting any of these people. But the reality is, I don't see far-right groups starting riots for the past 110, 120 days. But how is that narrative exists for some reason? You look like you
I think it's, it's what the media wants.
Yeah, for me it's like a huge media creation. It like we were speaking before the show started, is for them to even be brought up at a presidential debate, to me, it was really disappointing, because it's like we're in the middle of a pandemic. People are literally trying to put food on the table. People are wondering if we're getting a stimulus check. And we're talking about the Proud Boys. Like, like I said, if you're in Michigan or Pennsylvania and you're an undecided voter, if there are any undecided voters still, you're just wondering, like, how does this even affect my life? So
what's a Proud Boy?
Yeah, so I think, for me, they're becoming just they got too much free clout off the presidential debate. They're becoming this huge media creation that's not really playing a role in the election. And for some reason they're like the number one.
It's Joe Biden
topic. Yeah. So.
I can tell you what.
Yeah.
It's just Donald Trump is the answer, and it's a mechanism by which this violence in our streets can be,
they can blame him.
Blame him.
Yeah.
And with Antifa, that's obviously not the case. And so the downplaying that you see there, I mean, that's no surprise either. So that's my answer.
Is it Antifa rioting or is it Black Lives Matter?
I think
there's
it's
a mix
both.
for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, certain cities that we've been to,
Kenosha
there's more of an Antifa presence.
Really?
And in other like Portland, for example.
But they're flying Black Lives Matter flags in Portland.
Yeah, there's a combination there as well. But I'd say in terms of the organization of the tactics and stuff like that, like when we were in Portland, the BLM activists would come up and take the stage right around sunset, and they'd say, "I'm not going near that fence. I'm here to demonstrate. And when we come in near that fence and they come out, and when we're violent, and we bring them here, then that defeats the whole purpose of what we're doing." So we saw a lot of that, and then the Antifa folks come out at 12 a.m. when all the cable news, they're no longer live, and there's no more correspondents out there, and it's no longer a party-like atmosphere. We'll just leave it at that.
I can rag on the media forever. It's crazy how you guys, you're literally just there the whole time, be it through any one of these riots or particularly like the more severe, crazy ones like Kenosha, and the news crews, they're gone. I'm curious to people listening. Have you ever thought about the fact that when you see one of these Twitter videos, there's no news crews anywhere? Yeah, like I don't know. What do you guys think? Like you're the only ones down there.
I think part of it is because the media is these protesters and rioters do not like the media. So if you come in with a big camera and a legitimate crew, the chances that you get forcibly pushed out are high. We've seen it multiple times before. And so what we do is we go in much more low key with literally our cell phones and try to be as discreet as possible because they don't want media there.
Right.
And the difference is that a lot of these outlets will say, okay, you know what, it's too dangerous, let's just leave. But it's part of the story, and I think that's the other issue I have with a lot of people in the media is that they say that conservatives are overblowing the violence, but when it's happening night after night in multiple cities, it's part of the story.
And then, even on my very first night, ever actually reporting for Daily Caller on the job, I believe it was like May 29th, and the White House goes on lockdown. And I believe it was like 12:15. I remember it. And our producer, Sean, he messaged me and says, "Hey, we need a reporter on the ground." He's like, "Would you go? I know you just started." I was like, "I'll get an Uber right now." And as soon as I got to the ground at Lafayette, Square, it was hectic. The crowd was going crazy, and I was setting up my phone on this like little cell phone tripod, and as I'm setting it up, I could hear Leland Verrett from Fox News, getting ready to do his live shot. And as soon as he says, "I'm Leland Verrett with Fox News," you could just hear the whole crowd say, "Fox News?" And then that's when they all go, to attack him. They like stole his mic. They threw it back at him. And then this is my very first time ever reporting for the Daily Caller. So I was like, I just turned my phone on. I hit record. And then I started doing like some narration. And then, Leland was able to make it to the police. And I just posted it on Twitter. And I think like an hour or two later, the clip was at like 200K views.
Wow.
Then the next morning I woke up to like, Fox playing it, Tucker wanted it. But right there, that was my first experience saying, wait, this game is different now because, I went to school where, I majored in broadcast journalism, like the old school style where like when you go report a story, you dress nice, you look good, your hair is combed over.
And you talk like this.
And you talk like this. I'm George Ventura live at Lafayette Park. And I learned really quick. I'm like, you know what? This is going to be a different style of journalism that I was taught of the whole dressing nice. We're going to have to adapt. And right there at that first night, how, like Shelby said, is we kind of learned like, hey, we can't approach this, how we used to.
Aren't you mad that you wasted all that money?
Yeah,
going to school. You just go out there with a cell phone and like Tucker Carlson's like, "Let me run it." Man, was that fateful day where Trump did the photo op?
No, that was a few days before that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The lockdown happened later.
Yeah.
Yeah. So seeing Leland Verrett get attacked was pretty crazy, and I believe about 2 or 3 weeks after that, Shelby actually got attacked when we were reporting on Beal and Plaza. Shelby, you want to speak about that experience?
Yeah, so we were, it was sort of a tense situation. There was a line of police and then a line of protesters or rioters. I don't know if unrest people, whatever you call it.
Unrest, yeah.
Unresters.
Unresters.
And
I like
yeah,
that.
I don't know how,
Perfect.
and a group came with shields, and they were all moving to the front of the line so that the police had shields and they had shields. And so naturally I roamed over and started to film, and a group of girls accused me of being an undercover cop. And I was like, I'm not pretty sure I'm not an undercover cop. But they didn't believe me. And one or two protesters were actually trying to calm the situation down. I showed them like my bio. I showed them, my Twitter to show them, who I was. And one of them was like, yeah, okay, she is who she says she is. And they were like, delete the footage, stop filming. And I, am Irish Catholic, like short-tempered, like,
Heck yeah.
if you tell me to do something, I'm probably just going to do the exact opposite.
Yeah.
So I stayed because it was sort of, I also knew that a lot of media will just leave. And I feel like that's really wrong. And you can't this is my job, and you can't be bullied into something. And so they started pushing me around, shoving me. One of the girls grabbed my phone. She was on the ground, like with her. I think one of my coworkers was like prying her fingers off of my phone. And I got shoved into the police line, actually, and the police pulled me through.
Wow.
And then they handcuffed me.
You guys have like special phones when you go down that like.
Nope, this is my only phone. That's why I fought for, like, I was not letting go of this phone. I was like, this is my baby,
You definitely got to get like
yeah,
a burner.
a second phone.
Yeah, just something you
I
can
think
trash,
that's a
like
good
this
idea.
cheapo
I'm gonna
Android.
tell the story from my perspective though, because basically that police.
Well, so you want to start over real quick? Just,
Yeah. Well, yeah. Sorry, I got to tell this story from my perspective because Shelby and I were right there on the police lines. Things were kind of settled down. Actually, the police had pushed everybody out of the area, and they were set up, and so there were just two lines of protesters, unresters, and
Unresters.
and I'm actually negotiating a content deal, trying to keep everybody employed, and Shelby's like, hey, I'm gonna go over there with Matt and Vince. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you're good. Okay, cool. And I'm on the phone, and I hear all this yelling, and I turn, and I just see Shelby behind police lines, handcuffed, just screaming.
Right.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, I think I got to go.
I remember that. I think there was a video of you like getting
Yeah.
cuffed, right?
Yeah.
And people were freaking out like, why are they handcuffing her?
No, that was the second time we got arrested.
No. I
Was
remember.
it?
I remember
Oh.
saying like it was BS that you got handcuffed because.
Oh, yeah.
You were being attacked.
Yep.
But then you guys got arrested
Yes.
recently.
Last week.
So my initial reaction to you guys getting arrested. So just like well, yeah, I'll just start from the beginning. When I heard that you guys got arrested, I saw a bunch of people on Twitter tweeting like, this is BS. They're arresting journalists. And I got to be honest, I was laughing. You know why? Because this happens all the time. Journalists get arrested. They get shoved by cops. Like, I've got friends who are reporting in Portland, and they're standing outside where the cop will come and shove them. It happens. It does. And all of a sudden now to see people who normally have never tweeted about it, like sounding just like these other left-wing journalists, it's a legitimate. I'm not trying to disrespect anybody. I'm saying like now we're seeing conservatives be like, whoa. And then my reaction was like, you know what, man, look, it's chaotic. You got Antifa pretend to be press. And then the cops are like, there's a big crowd in front of me. I have no idea who you are. Everybody's getting arrested. And I've been in this situation. But when your guys' boss called them up and said, yeah, they're reporters, and the police refused to cut you loose, that's when I was like, nah, that's some BS.
Yeah.
You can make a mistake, and I'm willing to be like, well, fine, mistakes happen. But I don't know. You guys want to tell a story about what went down when you got arrested, covering the Antifa riots?
Yeah, well,
you start.
I think Shelby should start because her starting point is a little bit more interesting than mine because she
Oh,
was like
yeah.
a block away from the police shooting, right, Shelby?
Yeah, so, earlier in that night, 2 police officers had been shot.
This is Louisville.
In Louisville.
Yeah.
And the police shooting happened, I want to say, a mile or so away from the protest area, which is where we were ultimately arrested. And so I was near the hospital. I had just recorded the chief of police had done an update. You know, the 2 officers were alive and one was in surgery. And then I headed back to the protest area. And it was, you know, after curfew, but press are exempt from the curfew and exempt from unlawful assemblies because, you know, it's news and this is our job. And there was a really long line of police officers and sort of a scattered protester crowd. And the police were telling them to disperse. And after, I want to say 10, 15 minutes, they did appear to be leaving. They roamed down the block, and some of them went left, some of them went right. And that's when the police just came from all sides. And I just started recording. And apparently one of the police officers said that we were running from the police. And I have a video of me literally just standing, walking around in a circle, like, police are corralling everyone in. And the kettle. And then we were told to get on the ground, and I recorded that too. So I got on the ground. They were like, put your...
Wait, real quick. She got a watermark on the video as she was getting arrested.
I did.
So that's somebody you want working for you.
I was told that we have to have watermarks on our videos. So in the video you can see I'm saying, you know, we're press. And the first big issue was that we didn't have press credentials on us. And so I knew that we were likely going to be taken in, but I also knew, or I assumed, because I had already told my boss and everyone who worked at the collar, I knew that they were calling already to get us out. And so I assumed we were not even going to be processed because it was very clear, like Jeff, our editor-in-chief, you know, provided ample evidence that we were who we said we were. And I ended up getting processed, getting charged with 2 misdemeanors, unlawful assembly and failure to disperse, and I was held for 16 hours.
And then you got arrested at the same time, the same group?
Yeah, so you know, got arrested with Shelby. You know, we ended up getting split. My arresting officer was like, he actually believed that I was pressed. Like I had like a little press thing on me, and he was like at least trying to talk to his officers on what to do with me. But he at the end of the day, you know, it wasn't his call. And then we get into the into like we're about to get processed, so we're like chained up with everyone. And then like a sergeant or like a chief, like a higher up, comes into that section and says, you know, he yells my name, Jorge Ventura. And I said, you know, I raised my hand, and he brought me over. He says, hey, I'm on the phone with your editor-in-chief. You are accredited media, Jorge Ventura, and your partner. You know, he says Shelby's name, and he says, just hold on 1 sec. So when he walks back, so for me, I was already doing like a celebration dance. I was like,
I'm getting out.
We're out. I'm like, I was trying to find Shelby. Like, we're out of here. This is awesome. He then literally just comes back and was like, hey, we're going to charge you 2 misdemeanors. You're going to stay a night in jail. We give you, you know, several attempts to leave the unlawful assembly, and you did it. And I was just like,
what are the misdemeanors? You guys have the same ones?
No.
Yeah, mine was like local county ordinance, and then you know, failure to disperse. And then hers
mine
is different. Yeah.
Unlawful assembly and failure to disperse.
Yeah. So for a sec, Tim,
I'm the worst criminal.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
So it sucked for me because I got the high of thinking we're gonna escape.
Oh,
He just brought me down
Escape.
he just doubled down.
A third reporter, Drew Hernandez, was also arrested, and I had been already at this point when I saw him come through. I had been chained. They had they had us chained up literally like dogs. It was
like around the neck?
No, like there was like a chain link line with like multiple handcuffs, and we were
Chain
all
gang.
just handcuffed next to each other on the same chain for like 2.5 hours.
You know?
And Drew walked by and mouthed to me that someone was on the phone. So he must have been right next to Jorge. And so I assumed at that point that I was getting released. So then shortly after, the female officer who had arrested me came and uncuffed me. And 2 girls next to me started cursing at me, asking me, you know, white privilege, who am I? And they were white, but you know, who am I?
Amazing.
Why am I being taken away? And I thought I was getting released, so I was just like, I'm a reporter, and they went crazy. And then I ended up being in the cell with one of them,
Oh, no.
which made me nervous.
Yeah.
But
I can only imagine being chained to those people is like the scene from Dumb and Dumber where I don't. Have you seen this? Am I too old?
I've
where,
seen it.
Where like the dude's in the middle of Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels, and they're going and like screaming in his ears, and he's like, man, I could.
It was a mixed bag. There were some girls crying. Some girls were just sitting there like, this is what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Some girls were very angry. But every time one of the girls moved, we'd all move because we were all handcuffed together. And the girl who was they ran out of handcuffs, so they started handcuffing us like I was zip tied and handcuffed with one handcuff.
Oh, wow.
And the girl behind me was using the other handcuff, and she was like 6 inches taller than me. So my like shoulder was like, it was, yeah.
Oh man.
Not a good
So
time.
how many of the men were crying in your cell?
Well, no men were crying in mine, but
Well,
I had.
hold on. That's weird.
Were you crying?
Men and women are,
I had,
Same.
but I was in there with, small cell, one bathroom with 40 men.
Oh, it's not even a bathroom.
Yeah, so I got.
Wait. Were you chained together?
Yeah, well, we were at first. Then we go into cell, but before, when we were chained up, I still had my phone, so I was like,
Oh, nice.
I was like taking pictures
my
and like using my
gosh.
phone, and then I would look at Shelby, and she was just like, and I was like, oh.
were you like in the same holding cell, like across?
No, so before they processed everyone, they arrested over 100 people that night. So they were like a mess. So
Yeah.
we were like, there was one line of people chained up that were females, another line were females, another line of men. And then once we got processed, we went into holding cells, and that was separated. And my holding cell was like off in a corner, so we couldn't even see the men. I think you guys were across from another female holding cell.
Was anybody singing?
Oh, yes, actually.
I knew it.
At one point, there was one nurse who was kind of nice to us, and they named her Miss Jackson. And they started doing I'm sorry, Miss. I'm not going to sing for people, but yeah. And then at another time, they started screaming BLM chants. Like, you can't stop the revolution. And then they decided to stop because they didn't want to be charged with inciting a riot inside a jail.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Is that,
Yeah.
'cause
I don't know if that's a thing, but they were like,
Yeah.
we should probably,
Well, I don't know if
tone it down.
that's a thing, but I know singing is a thing.
Yeah.
Like they always sing, and I would just be like, "Look, man, I've been arrested. I think off the top of my head, I can remember two instances, but I've never been processed. So I was in St. Louis. I got arrested, and this is really, really annoying to me that there's like it doesn't matter what political faction people are involved in. They don't understand what arrest means. So I literally had an officer say, "You are under arrest." Cuff me, sit me down. And then half an hour later, you have press credentials, pull out my wallet, take a look, uncuff me and say, get out. That's an arrest. It's not detained. Detained, there's different legal, there's legal distinctions there. And then I was in DC when they surrounded this whole group of like 250 people. And I was standing on the sidewalk, and there was like these stair set. It was like 2 or 3 stairs. This was the J20 rioting in Washington, D.C. for Trump's inauguration. And all of these people just like run full speed past the cops. They're like knocking cops down. Cops are spraying everybody. And I just like back off. And that was the mistake. The cops surround everybody in this little space that I was in. And so the first thing I did was I went to the far edge of where the police like were lined up. So I was like literally standing next to the cop and staying away from the people screaming. And then I just asked one guy for a supervisor, and they like wouldn't really give me any attention because they're like standing with their batons out. And then someone like finally one of the cops nods, and then like, I guess whispers somebody. The lieutenant comes over, and I was like, I'm holding my press card. I just want to let you know I'm press. And he goes, don't care. Everybody here is you're under arrest. You are not free to go. And that's just what's happening. And I was like, dude, I know. Just letting you know. That's all I'm saying. And so then finally he comes back over, and there was like a news crew, like it was like an NBC crew, and they had a camera. And he looked at him, and he, fingered, come over here. And then the cops move out of the way. And then I immediately like pop up behind him, and I hold up my card, and the guy looks at me and he fans me over. And then he was like, show me your press cards. And then I did. And they pulled out a small handful of the journalists. A couple of the journalists that were in there were screaming at the top of their lungs at the cops, you mother effer, I'm effing press. What gives you the right? They got arrested. Yeah. I was sitting there like with my hands up, just like chilling. And I was like, the cop that was next to me was like agitated and looking, and whenever I was doing something, I'd let him know. I'd be like, I'm just going to go in my bag, grab my cell phone. Just want you to know. He's like nods. Because he doesn't know what these people are doing. Yeah. So I'm like trying to be very, careful of that. But so I've never been, I say this because I've never been actually brought down to the station with these people. And I'm eternally grateful. Because I'll tell you what, I've been arrested for skateboarding before, and I got charged. They wanted to get me on a felony, which is like just ridiculous, over the top. He was riding his skateboard in downtown Chicago, so we're gonna throw the book at him. Ultimately, the judge like got really angry because they ended up giving me a misdemeanor, but the judge got super angry when he found out. But so I'm sitting. When I got arrested, I got put in this concrete block. The lights are on full blast. There's like no water. It's just you go in a room and there's a concrete block to sit on. And the only thing I could hear was some guy wailing who was like probably mentally unwell. I can deal with all that. I can sit down there. I can fold my legs and I can, do some Zen meditation or whatever and just zone out and be like, I can sit through this. I can endure. But I tell you what, man, if you put a couple hundred like Antifa leftists singing Kumbaya, I'd probably bash my skull against the wall and that'd be the end.
I will say, I think that I did much better with these people in with me. Granted, they didn't know where I worked because I was genuinely afraid of saying where I worked. So they asked me and I said I was a freelancer. And then they asked me who I was freelancing for. And I said I'm just freelancing for freelancers.
Yeah, you just say, well, we just sell it afterwards.
Yeah.
Like, so it could be anybody.
Because it is we have been targeted and that's like a genuine concern. And I think that was a really big concern that the caller expressed to the police department and it didn't matter.
So just for everybody who's listening, the Daily Caller, that's Tucker Carlson's outlet, right?
Yeah.
Is he still involved or he stepped down?
He sold his shares to Neil Patel. So.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah.
But it's still associated
yes.
with, he founded it, I guess. Is that what it is?
Yeah, Neil Patel is Tucker's college roommate.
Oh, that's
they
weird.
They founded it together in 2010.
Oh, okay,
cool.
that's not weird.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I was like selling your company to your college roommate. That's like an interesting. Oh, wait, they started it together because they're friends. That I get.
Yeah. But I will say, actually, I think that Louisville was more BLM focused than Antifa focused. That was one of the cities, compared to Portland, I would say is more Antifa focused. So the message was a lot clearer in Louisville than in some other cities where I feel like they're just destroying things for no reason. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there wasn't as much destruction in Louisville as I thought. And and actually my cellmates agreed with me. They were like, we thought the city was going to burn. And there were things broken into
but it wasn't like
it wasn't Kenosha or Minneapolis. Yeah. But I will say that some of the people that were in there definitely deserved to be in there. I think one of them broke a police officer's hand.
Whoa, brutal.
Well, she said she didn't, but I don't know. But some of them, seemed like they really were against, violent protests. They were, more for peaceful stuff, and they did have, legitimate stories and messages to share. So that was interesting because it sort of opened up my eyes to a different side of the protests that you don't see as much, and they don't really give you the ability to see because they don't like media and they don't like press.
Yep.
And it also opened my eyes to just how bad jail is. Would not recommend.
Yeah.
I didn't realize, if you don't always get water when you want water,
sucks.
like the toilet was right by the window where actual inmates could watch us.
Yay.
And
Wow.
luckily we devised a plan. We had a blanket, and anytime someone would need to pee,
That's
multiple people would come up. But
it's a very common thing for the people when protesters get arrested. They
Yeah.
have these techniques.
Yeah.
So if you're lucky enough to be a journalist getting arrested with one of the organizers, they know exactly how to work
we had
everything.
we had one or two organizers in our cell with us, and it was eye-opening. I mean, horrible, and I almost lost my mind. I'm serious. Not knowing the time for 16 hours, it messes with you. And the fact that I knew that they knew that I was pressed and I was still not being released, I thought was a real failure in the justice system, whoever it was that was allowed to release us. I was really disappointed.
Do you think you're stronger now having experienced it?
Yes, I think I have different. It's again opened up a whole different sort of aspects of these protests, of the justice system, that I've never seen before.
Do you guys consider yourselves to be conservatives?
I would say I'm more. I mean, I'm trying to just provide unbiased news. I've never voted before. I still haven't voted. I'm not registered.
So not even political.
Yeah, I'm not really political. What would you say, Shelby?
Yeah, I think that's because people just assume that we're uber conservative because of who we're associated with. I would say none of us are really. I mean, I know Richie's politics. Richie voted for you can go ahead and say it.
He's gonna say it.
Well, yeah, I did. I voted for Barack Obama.
Oh,
A lot of people out there.
I voted for Obama the first time.
Yeah.
You voted for the second time?
I did.
Oh, wow.
I didn't regret the first time, but I was 18 years old. I just moved to Washington D.C. But the second time, yeah, I do. I definitely regret it. But I think I'm more of an anti-establishmentarian. I saw the Bush years, I saw the Clinton years growing up, and I really saw a problem with both sides of the establishment. And Barack Obama he did run on a platform of hope and change. It's just that once he got into office, clearly he was kind of sucked into that establishment. So I mean, I would consider myself an anti-establishmentarian. Yeah.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, before I started this, I started as a journalist in 2019. And before that, I played professional tennis for 4 years. And before that, I, played D1 at University of Iowa. So I was sports. And I was hardly even in America. So I had no idea what was going on in American politics. So I didn't grow up being... Actually, when I first got my job, my aunt, we call her Girl Kelly. She'll be happy. I gave her a shout out. But she was shocked that I was going into politics. But I think that has allowed me to really see both sides. Like, I genuinely do feel like I can understand both sides of the spectrum, and therefore I do try really hard in my reporting. If it's peaceful, it's peaceful. Some of these people have legitimate things.
I think a lot of what we hear is from the protesters and the unresters. There are real legitimate problems that need to be solved. The problem is, when you have, if someone comes to me and says Black Lives Matter, I'll be like, absolutely. I don't know, where do we go from there? What do you want to do, If you tell me that somebody got shot and they shouldn't have, let's talk about it, because cops should not be executing people if it is like a murder. If it's the instance where it's like a fight breaks out and someone's struggling with cops, I don't know what we're supposed to do, you know what I mean? Like with Jacob Blake, for instance. He was fighting with cops. He had a knife. And he was apparently, stealing the woman's car. He wanted on a felony warrant. And she was yelling, according to the lawyer, he's got my kids, he's got my keys. And so how's the cop supposed to respond to this guy who's wanted on a felony warrant doing these things? It's a challenge. The problem I see is I got no problem sitting down with a Trump supporting conservative who's yelling Blue Lives Matter and we got to respect the cops. I'm going to be like, I absolutely agree. For a society to function, cops got to be able to make arrests, even if sometimes they make mistakes. It can be really annoying, but you deal with the process after the fact, and you don't fight with them. But then the other side is burn it all down, destroy, abolish police, defund police, and it's so far removed from a reasonable approach to how we deal with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just been a crazy situation, I think, for me and Shelby or anyone doing this work. For me, I was in sports journalism before I got it, the whole political thing, and then.
So wait, you're both sports?
Yeah.
Well, she played in the game. I was more of the sidelines guy, but I didn't even know what a Republican or Democrat was till 2018 to fully switch. Then now that I started reporting on a lot of these protests and marches, the unresters. I'll have people from my hometown message me and be like, why are you portraying Black Lives Matter, the movement, like this? And I literally have to be like, I have no idea it was like this. I was on the ground. I didn't know they were attacking press and attacking business owners and doing this till I was on the ground. I'm not. There's no narrative here. We just hit record. We upload it. Then everyone else gets to form their own opinion on the video. I think that's a strength that we really have at the Daily Caller that you can't really find in other places.
I do want to say, just real quick though, I think that's what you touched on is really important. That's why we all work at the Caller, which is people don't realize. They just assume, oh, you work at the Daily Caller, you're like a conservative, and you're Tucker Carlson basically. And that's really not the case. There's such a multitude of political ideologies of people who work at the Daily Caller, and the newsroom is really just like a place where everybody hashes that out. Any story that comes up in the news that's complicated or difficult, we're just talking about it with uncensored, straight up. And when I worked at NBC News, it was the opposite. It was like a funeral home.
Totally.
There.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Shelby and I were talking about this because we fight all the time when we're on the road.
Oh my gosh.
Little fights though. Little fights.
Bickering.
But at NBC, once a year, the people who've been working together for 30 years and they've kept it all bottled up for 30 years pops off and it's just a meltdown.
So like
you've never
I
seen.
think I scared some of the rioters in Kenosha. I started screaming at Richie in public
Yeah.
at like
Oh, yeah,
midnight.
those- yep.
Over
I
what?
remember it.
What-
I-
why?
He wanted
I'm gonna-
me
I'm
to
gonna pass the
follow
mic
him
off.
around like a little puppy dog because he was nervous because I'm a woman.
I
You know.
see
I
how
I got
it
myself in
is.
trouble actually.
And then
Oh,
he got
snap.
himself, yeah.
So when you mentioned you wouldn't recommend it, I agree. Don't go to jail.
Yes.
But there is something to like, we're too comfortable. You know, like
agree.
young people in
Yeah.
this country don't understand how bad things could be. And that includes many of these protesters who are like, burn it all down, defund this, abolish this. And I don't mean all of them, because I know like there are regular people who just are angry about police brutality and stuff, though I think they're being manipulated for sure. These people have never experienced real hardship. That's why it's funny to me when like you mentioned that some of the women are crying and some of them are just like, well, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
You can I'd be willing to bet the women who are like, this is what's happening, are the people who have actually experienced something hard and they've been toughened up and they understand you're going to be okay. You don't need to worry about this stuff. So like I remember when you know every time I've been arrested more than once, I just like, all right, you know, I'm not gonna die in a jail cell. I'm not going. It's gonna be a day or something. And then I, you know, nothing ends up happening on it. It's just I got some bunk arrests skateboarding. You know, they don't like skateboarders. but there are many circumstances I've been in where you can clearly tell people who are wads of cookie dough, who are, you know, marshmallows, and the people who have actually experienced real hardship. So it's really great. I did I don't know. Have you guys done any hostile environment training?
No.
This is
Well,
fun
unless
stuff.
you count like growing up with my family
Where did you grow up?
in New York.
Probably
I'm
not.
one of 5.
Yeah, I got
Oh, yeah.
Salvadoran parents.
My mom
so-
is a
Yeah.
prosecutor,
There
so
you go. Ooh.
you can imagine. She used
That's
to tell us
interesting.
democracy stops at the front door.
Oh man.
Wow.
That's awesome.
No
so
joke.
so I had been covering civil unrest, riots. When I say civil unrest, I mean like bordering on revolution. I mean that in the literal sense, not this like, we're not going to call protesters protests. So I've covered protests, unrest, like actual revolution, and rioting. And so when I started working for the ABC News company, they were like, everybody's got to have hostile environment training. And I was like, I should be giving the training because I've been doing this, you know, for X many years. And most of these people, like, even the people who are doing the training don't have the most up-to-date understanding of the modern technology and what's going on. And, you know, I got a whisper, wink, wink. It's the insurance company, dude. Like, insurance company wants all the reporters to have special training. But I tell you what, man, when we were doing the training, they paired me up with a former Marine, fresh out of the Marines, and they could not get us. So like the way these trainings work is like they have fake landmines, you know, so they put these things in the ground that are hidden. And when you step on it, it sprays, you know, ink or something. And they're like, oh, you got landmine. And there are a bunch of scenarios where they try and get you. And it was a lot of fun. It's really fun the way these. So like I got to participate as a local villager. And they do this thing where they have the news crew come in. And then that's all they do. And they tell us, you know, because like it's your turn to play the villagers. I pickpocketed people. It was amazing. I was like taking their stuff and they were panicking. But when I was there with the Marine, it was really amazing because we actually escaped their final terrorist scenario. So they did the scenario where they're like, your assignment now from the editor is to interview the leader of a terrorist organization. And we're going to go. Everything's been arranged. Your security is with you. And it was really cool. Like the SUV pulls up, we hear gunshots, and then like we see people on the ground. Me and the Marine guy were gone. Like we were out of there. And then we hear from a distance, where'd you go? And we're laughing. And I'm like, this guy gets it. But it was so bunk because then the trainer guy goes, you guys are dead. And we started laughing, and they're like, come back. And we came back, and they were like, you got the terrorists killed you. And I was like, dude, we immediately both went for dead ground. And we immediately serpentined through trees. We were gone, and we know it because this guy knows. The Marine dude knows better than I do. But I was like, we were laughing in the woods, hearing them in the distance, upset that we like beat their training.
That's
amazing. So anyway, I bring that up just because like when you're on the ground, and you guys probably know this too. Like with you can see when you see journalists or whatever, which one of them has actually got experience, and which ones are like the local desk reporter who was asked to go out and film this stuff. Because I'll tell you what, man. When I was in Ferguson, there's a couple things I love. 2 instances in Ferguson where gunshots are ringing out, and I'm on the deck, and then I look up and I see one of these local reporters going, are those fireworks? And then one of my favorite all-time blunders is from CNN when they were in Ferguson and the gunshots go off, and it's this woman, and she goes, "What? Oh," and she's just like waving her arms, and like, I'm like, stop standing there waving your arms. They're shooting bullets. Get on the ground. And then she just like hobbles over like behind a building, and I'm like, when I was at the first shots that went off when I was in Ferguson, I was standing by one of the shops in the parking lot, and we heard a shot, and then I heard another shot, and I immediately just dove. Like I belly flop. I put my hands down, slid, and I heard the whip crack over my head. The bullet hit the building. Oh my God. So the like being on the ground and seeing these people who are sent out by local news, like they have no experience, no idea what to do. I'm not surprised. They're like, well, we got here at 7:50. We recorded our 5-minute hit, and let's go home. You good? You shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
But then it is really weird that you see like especially with you guys in Kenosha, because all the footage out of Kenosha, you don't see any reporters anywhere. Mm-hmm. It's just literally people running around and all this chaos, right? So we should, let's you guys want to talk about what went down in Kenosha and your experience with that stuff?
Yeah.
Where do we begin? This is a crazy story.
Well, one thing I wanted to kind of mention too, Tim, is not also like, we know when we're in Kenosha, we're like, obviously we're running around covering all the crazy stuff, but also taking the time the next morning and like actually speaking to the business owners who were like affected.
Right, right.
Even because like when I was going down, I think I woke up at like 7:30, hit the streets by like 8, and was interviewing the business owners. I didn't even see local news like talking to these folks. No. And a lot of these folks, this is like their whole livelihood is destroyed, And I think that's another big mistake is that news is not making, is like taking the time to tell the stories of the people who were like affected in these situations.
It's like almost not news.
Yeah. And it's been, insane. Like I think when the night of the, show, you guys were actually right there. I think you guys should tell your side of your Kenosha story, because you guys were in the midst of it.
The shooting happened the second night. The first night was when everything burned down. So the first night, these people burned down, entire streets.
Wow.
Like to the ground. It was probably the worst destruction I've seen covering.
Yeah, because we didn't see
riots.
anything like that, because they basically, attacked that courthouse, and then when they got back, once they got back there from the courthouse, they just ran rapid on Kenosha. Like I've never seen anything like that. I remember just walking and just seeing like buildings. 10 people, attacking the car dealership, setting cars on fire, going into store. It was like a free for all. There wasn't a police presence.
You didn't even know where to turn. If you turned to the left, you had footage. If you turned to the right, there was something going on. Behind you, there was something. It was crazy.
I think that's a good place to start the story at night of, though, because what happened was we all got pushed out from outside the courthouse around the fence, and all the protesters were pushed out to the park, and then a block beyond, which is where that car dealership was burned out that everybody saw on the first and second night. Massive car fires. But across the street from there, Shelby and I encountered some individuals who were working for that business who had power washers, and they were trying to put out the car fires. That was on the second night. The shooting happened on the third night. So I went in to get Wi-Fi at the hotel, and I saw on Twitter that there were armed individuals, and you guys were still out there. And I saw those videos and those photos of the armed individuals in front of the same business that we had just seen the guy with the power washer the previous night, because the fire department was nowhere to be seen. And so that's why I went out thinking, well, there's a story right there. Why are these armed individuals here? And that was actually, I arrived there 15 minutes before the shooting, and that's when I interviewed Kyle Rittenhouse. So it was just that short a period of time.
What happened?
Well, basically, I was just walking towards that business, and I saw at least 3 armed individuals on the ground, and then like 3 up top as well. And it was really dark up on the top of the building, which is a little bit intimidating when you know these guys are armed and you can't even really make out what they're holding or what they're doing. But I just said very loudly, are any of you guys willing to do an interview? Because again, we're trying to interview the full story here. Right. So not only the protesters, not only the rioters, the unresters, the cops, but also the people who are, there, whatever, to defend the small business or whatever they were doing. I just wanted to find out. And Kyle volunteered himself and basically interviewed him for 3 minutes. And then he mentioned that he was a trained medic. He mentioned that he was there to protect the small business that he was standing in front of. And then he said, with one other armed individual, he said, we're going to go out and see if any of the protesters who have just been cleared out need medical attention. Do you want to come with us? And this is all on the internet. You can see it all, the video that I recorded.
So wait, he told you he was going to go provide medical assistance to protesters, and he asked you to come with him?
Correct. And that's when we started walking in the direction of where the shooting eventually took place. And actually, I was trying to find Shelby at the time as well. She was just about a block away. Oh, did I swear?
But, but when you hang up the phone.
Oh, yeah. Don't curse. Yeah, because I'm getting to that part of the story. Good point.
You can curse.
Thank you.
There's no hard rules.
So I was walking with them, and as we were walking, he's shouting, "Medical! Anyone need medical?" And that was drawing a lot of attention just in general. Young kid with an AR-15 shouting at a riot.
That doesn't sound smart, dude.
And in hindsight, it wasn't very smart to walk along with him. But, I basically I was wondering what these people, why they were mad at him, why they were yelling at him as he was asking if anybody needed medical. And actually 4 individuals shouted something like, "We remember you from earlier." And that's actually when I parted ways with him after the interview, because I wanted to get their story. I wanted to hear why they were mad at Kyle. And so I walked over to those individuals, and you can see in the video, it's this guy with like bright yellow pants, and they were not happy about me recording. So I turned my phone off. I went with my go-to of, pulling out a White Claw to diffuse the situation and offering it up. And I talked with them for a couple of minutes and just asked them, why they were mad. They mentioned a confrontation with him when they were jumping on some cars earlier, but clearly they recognized him from earlier, and they were very mad about it. And the only thing that stuck out to me was that Kyle, you can see on the video, actually, as I'm walking behind him, he kind of looks at them, smiles, and walks away. And I don't know if we've been to enough of these for us to know that stuff can descend into chaos pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And that's actually, after I finished speaking with them, is when I saw Kyle running with fire extinguisher in one hand and the gun in the other. And so I saw him running. I wanted to know, why is he running? What's he running towards?
With a fire extinguisher.
With a fire extinguisher. What's going on here? So actually, that's when I got on the phone with Shelby. I started jogging after him, and that's the kind of thing where you're like, okay, some kind of news, something is about to go down.
Right.
I said, "Shelby, where are you?" And we were talking. We were trying to triangulate where we were in relation to each other. And that's right as I caught up to Rittenhouse. I was yards back from where he was stopped in the road, and that's when some yelling started. And I told Shelby, "Oh, swear word, I gotta go." And that's immediately when Rosenbaum started to pursue Rittenhouse, and you can see on the video what happened from there. But basically, Rittenhouse sees him advancing and does a juke and runs into the direction of the car lot where the shooting eventually took place. And me being a dumb idiot who lectured Shelby about not getting into unsafe situations, ran after Rosenbaum, who was running after Rittenhouse. And that's when there was a pop that went off.
That was a gunshot.
Somewhere to at the time, there were so many fireworks and
No idea.
flashbangs going off that it wasn't clear to me what it was at the time. But what it was clear is that the moment that went off, Kyle stops and turns around. And we were both trailing him. And at that point, he had his gun pointed 45 degrees at the ground, and Rosenbaum was advancing at him still. And there wasn't much distance, so it was only a matter of a second or two from when he stopped to when Rosenbaum was on top of him. And that's when basically Rosenbaum lunged for the front portion of Rittenhouse's gun. He shouted something that I also can't say without swearing, but you can see on the video what he said right before he lunged. And
did he make physical contact with Rittenhouse's gun?
They were extremely, extremely close, but he didn't. And Rittenhouse actually dodged with the rifle around his lunge.
Wow.
And I only know that because my focus, the moment that he turned around, went onto the barrel of his gun.
Yep.
Because I realized that I was now in the crossfire of whatever was about to go down. And actually, when he swung the rifle to his left, my right, my first instinct was to go to my left. But I realized that's where Rosenbaum was, and that his rifle was going to return to there. So I actually stepped in the direction where he swung it.
Oh, dude.
And that's, basically right as he swung it back is when Rosenbaum was falling forward. He fired what I thought were 3 or 4 shots. It was really rapid.
Yeah.
But it looks like on the video it was 4. And that's when Rosenbaum collapsed to the ground, and you can actually hear more pops after that.
And then you pulled your shirt off.
Well, the crazy part is that I didn't realize the night of is that after Rittenhouse shoots, it looked to me like he ran away. And then I ran because there's other pops where Rosenbaum was also behind a car, and the shooting was going off. The pops were coming from this side. So I got behind the car. I said, I'm going to flip you over really slowly. He was basically non-responsive, but breathing.
Not really breathing.
Breathing.
I mean,
like
in the video, it was like
you
gurgling.
can hear it in the video.
Rattle,
Exactly.
yeah.
And that's actually, I didn't realize until I saw the footage afterwards, Rittenhouse runs around and actually shows up at my side. And I just saw a pair of legs next to me as I'm crouching over the body. And I just said, "What are you doing? Call 911." Not realizing that it was the Rittenhouse.
Yeah.
And I just saw his hand reach into his phone, and that's Shelby actually. And right after that, people started to arrive. Rittenhouse runs right past Shelby. And that's when you can see on the video, it was very chaotic, but basically, we were trying to find where the holes were, how we could apply pressure to the wounds. My dad was an ER doc. And so, I think he'd probably had some critiques for how I handled it medically. But once somebody said there's a hospital across the street, it was clear to me that we weren't doing anything beneficial there.
Right
And this
across
guy
the
had
street,
life-threatening
yeah.
wounds. So it was literally right across the street. And from the moment the shooting happened to the moment that we got to the hospital, because I've looked on my phone from the calls that I made when I got to the hospital, that was about 6 minutes. So we got him there very quickly.
You loaded him into your car?
So I actually carried him across the street with a couple of other individuals, and you could see on the video how chaotic it is. And actually, as I'm loading him into as we were running across, this guy who worked at the hospital said, "Load him into the SUV. It'll be quicker if we do it that way." Pops the tailgate, and Shelby was right there as well. You can see her in the video. She's wearing my backpack, and that's actually as we're loading him in. I felt like something hitting me in the side of the head. I thought I was getting bumped, and then somebody connected with the side of my face.
Someone punched you.
Someone punched me very hard. And it was only once he hit the side of my face that I realized it was a punch. And I turned and gave, as I'm getting into the back of the car, like a little brother kind of kick. I'm the middle of three boys, so I'm pretty good at that. And that's when the medic or the hospital employee pulled away. And at that point, Rosenbaum was basically barely breathing, and he had like a very, very weak pulse. And it was pretty clear that was.
Why'd you get punched?
Well, you can see in the video right after the shooting, somebody says, Did you shoot him?"
Yeah.
And I say, "What? Me? F word? No." And so I think that just indicates to me that people were looking for who did it. They were angry. People were shouting. And I think whoever punched me thought that somehow, I don't know, that I was involved or whatever.
Have you guys seen the video that Rittenhouse's lawyer put out breaking down the whole night?
Yeah.
So have you guys you've seen it? So they identified the guy who fired first, right? So what triggered Kyle to turn around? They say this is the guy. He's holding the gun, and at first people were reporting, New York Times said he fired into the air, but when you actually watch the video slowed down, it doesn't look like he fired in the air. It looks like he was shooting at Kyle or presumably Kyle, but that there were, I think, 3 more shots not from Kyle after he shot Rosenbaum, and it was reported that one of the hits to Rosenbaum went in his back.
Yeah.
Now, so my question is, you're there. Was this because Rosenbaum was spun around somehow, or do you think maybe he got shot by somebody else?
Based on what I saw, Rosenbaum was falling forward as he lunged. And I do remember the sensation of something going past my legs, and it's not clear now looking afterwards whether that when exactly that took place, because all the shots were such rapid succession. Right. But with respect to where Rosenbaum was hit, as he was falling forwards, it would make sense that actually he could have been hit there by Rittenhouse.
Because he was falling forward and then his head goes down.
And for me, it was like one of those things. It's like that in the movie Snatch. Like you always think, like when you're like in a dangerous situation, you might die. You'll do something like heroic. Like I kind of just did. But I mean, I had my eyes fixed on the barrel, but he fired so quickly that it was very difficult for me to determine where that rifle actually connected with his body, because they were so close. They almost he fell almost into him.
Yeah,
they were that close. So it was hard for me to tell specifically which shot went where. But the fact that he was falling forward like that, and Rittenhouse was shooting as he was falling down.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, you can see in the video, he fires that first shot, second shot. And I think just because of the momentum that Rosenbaum had, that the moment that he got hit, that momentum continued to carry him forward.
Interesting.
And you can see he landed right on his face. And so that's consistent with the fact that he lunged for the front portion of the rifle.
So I'll ask more about the other guys in Kenosha, but you guys were there, and I don't know to what extent you witnessed everything beforehand, but would you consider what Kyle did to be self-defense?
I definitely can't comment on that, because my role in this situation is I'm a witness, and
I see.
All I can say is what I saw.
Yeah.
And I saw Rosenbaum reach for the front portion of that gun, and I saw Rittenhouse dodge it and shoot. Now, I'm not going to comment on the laws in Wisconsin, what constitutes self-defense. I'm not a lawyer. I'm a video director.
Right.
But I saw what I saw from very close range. And like I said, given how focused I was on where the rifle was going, that was very, very clear.
Can you talk about the charges on Kyle at all?
Yeah, I think they're public.
I can try to. I don't want to. I'm also
because you're a witness.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
Yeah,
if it's too much, we'll just
let me know. I'll let you know if I can't.
Yeah. Well, so at this point, then you're at the hospital, so you didn't see any of the other stuff with like the other guys.
I saw the guy who got shot in the bicep.
Did he?
I saw him come in.
Whoa.
Immediately after I loaded Rosenbaum onto the gurney, I was covered in blood, and I was actually preparing to go into the bathroom to rinse the blood off, and that's when he came in with 2 police officers, and they said, we have a shooter, we have another shooting victim, and I looked at his arm and I was like, man, like that's
his bicep was gone.
It was gone.
I'm sorry to be graphic for people that are listening, but you can see in the video the meat of his arm vaporize. I'm not kidding. Like it turns into dust.
I cannot believe he didn't lose his arm.
And the bones were broken in there too. I mean, it was
wow.
Sure, yeah.
So did you guys see? Were you guys there when then Kyle ran and like what happened next?
So I was right across the street during that whole thing. So as soon as the shots rang out, earlier you were talking about the dumb people who like don't go to the ground.
Yeah.
So I ran towards the gunshots.
Oh my.
Wow.
Because I was genuinely worried that Richie, who is not just my coworker but my friend, was shot, and so I was like, I don't know what I would have done if he was shot, but I needed to make sure that the team was okay. And as I ran across the street, I think I got video of it actually. Kyle is running right past me, and there's people chasing him saying, he's the shooter, why'd you shoot him? And Kyle is sort of running, but then sometimes stopping and turning around and sort of like flailing his gun wildly. So I decided, let's not chase after the guy with the flailing gun who people say just shot someone.
Good call.
And let's make sure the team's okay and everyone's okay. So I ran towards where the first shooting victim was, and this was all took like 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And when I got there, Richie was there was a guy on his back who he was shirtless, right? Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, like white guy, shirtless on his back. I had no idea who it was. And then I saw another shirtless person. I was like,
what's going on?
Where'd the shirts go?
Helping him. And I realized after a few seconds that it was Richie. And so I was like, okay, and at this point there was sort of a crowd gathering around the body, which is never helpful when you're trying to move a body. So I stayed pretty close, like right behind. I have video of the whole thing. But at one point, I think as they were trying to get him down the driveway of the hospital, people weren't moving. And I remember screaming, like, move. But what are you doing? Like, get out of the way. This car can't drive. And it was so chaotic, and it just makes the situation so much worse. And then Richie went to the hospital, and I sort of was just roaming the street, not like what just happened. And then more shots rang out. And at that point, I just dove behind a car with like 2 other random people. And as we're sitting there, firecrackers go off right behind us, and all 3 of us jumped so high in the air because and this one guy I remember just curses at nobody, like who's throwing fireworks right now, like are you kidding me? And those second round of gunshots we heard was the second shooting, which was just up the block. And I thought it was really crazy that it took, both of these shootings must have happened, it probably took total 7 or 8 minutes, maybe less, but police officers were down the street because they had been out all night pushing the protesters and the rioters back. And I just was shocked that it took them so long after the first round of gunshots to get there. Because that seems like a long time. They're 2 blocks away.
And there was a lot of confusion, too, because I was about 3 blocks and the shots go off, and I was with another reporter named Kaylin. I just looked at him and said, "We're running to the hotel." So we ran to the hotel, and I looked at Kaylin and said, "Let's wait 20 minutes and let's get back on the scene."
Wait, so when you heard the first shots, you went to the hotel?
I just ran because I was already headed that way. When I heard it, we ran. Then, like I said, there was so much confusion because so much chaos going on. Then Elijah Schaefer texts me, another reporter, and he says, "Stay in the hotel. People are doing drive-by shootings." So at that time, I look at Kaylin like, "Whoa!" So now we have people like drive-by shooting. This is insane. And then Kaylin's like, what should we do? I said, let's wait like 15 minutes. And then we went back to the scene, and we could actually still see like the casings on the ground. We were there right when the cops were doing like the whole investigation. And I went. Then there was a witness. There was a couple witnesses, so I went to go speak with them. Went to go speak to them to get their story, and they also thought people were doing drive-by shooting.
Whoa.
So at that time, I had no idea that Richie was in the hospital. I had no idea that like it was Kyle the shoot. Because at that time, I'm thinking, okay, it's multiple cars. I'm hearing this from multiple people. Like Elijah has already told me this, a witness. And, it was like till hours later, Shelby told me what really happened. And I was just shocked, because it was like, what the heck? My boss was in the midst of it. And, I couldn't believe it. I didn't find out what happened to Richie till about like 5, 6 in the morning.
Is this, have you guys covered riots or anything before this year?
I covered because I was living in California. So like I was covering like marches and like protests. Like the craziest stuff that I was covering was like right before I started coming with the color was I was covering like the reopen protests in California, but nothing. I mean, there's nothing compared to this at all.
But you were not in Richie.
Well, yeah, I started the collar in May of 17, and before that I was working as a video editor for Mark Levin, so I was not on the ground at all. But starting in May of 17, there was unrest, plenty of it, and so we've been covering that since the beginning. But I think the difference here is that in this election year, everything is being polarized and cast into one narrative box or another. And so I think the vacuum that exists now in terms of people being unwilling to cover the protests honestly is much bigger than it was in the past. So when we were in DC, right after, in DC after the inauguration, and then like Charlottesville and all that stuff, I think there was no shortage of coverage of those events, and that hasn't been the case in the past 6 months. So I think that the opportunity that our team has to actually go there and really show what's happening is greater now because it's more important now than before.
The risk is going up. They're not letting people film. They're attacking people.
That's also true, and I think that was not the case in protests leading up to this summer. They become incredibly aware of the fact that if crimes are perpetrated, all the people who are there who are pressed are going to be the ones who get them in trouble.
Yep.
And
so they've known this for a long time, but they've just now, like, it wasn't when you go to one of these unrests, whatever you want to call it. And I do think it's fair to draw the distinction between a protest, unrest, and riot, because unrest might have like some clashes with cops, but they're not burning things down, and a protest is like people waving little signs and singing Kumbaya. And then a riot is just wanton destruction and everything. But for the longest time, they would say, don't let anyone film because you'll get arrested, they'll use it as evidence. Now they really know. Now they've been active in organizing. But just to clarify too, is this like the first time you've been covering riots and protests and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, when I traveled as a professional tennis player, there was, what year was it with the Taksim Square in Istanbul?
That was 2013.
Yeah, so I did go there because
I was there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Maybe I saw you. But I was very much, because I always wanted to do sort of this field correspondence. I studied journalism in college, and so when I would go to these places, if there was something interesting going on, I would go just more for myself, just to check it out. And so I did do that, but really these were my first. I tried in 2019 when I first got to the collar, and there were some issues because I was a female. So I broke that barrier down, and
breaking glass ceilings.
Yeah, and so
there, depending on which country to go, there's definitely considerations that news organizations are becoming scared to address. So there was a news organization that sent a female reporter to Tahrir Square in Egypt, and of course, men took her.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's totally fair. I get it, but I think you can't blanket. All females cannot do this stuff.
I think also in a weird. So Tahrir Square, I was actually there in December of 2010 because I was studying Arabic in college, and I lived in Jordan, and that was right before the Arab Spring started. But there, as a female in a public place like that, I actually think Shelby being on the ground at these riots actually is much less threatening than Jorge or I. And as a result, she's able to blend in a lot
Absolutely.
more. And I think actually, despite me, well, you can call it asking you to walk around like a puppy dog, but I'm just trying. But my boss, Jeff Ingersoll, shout out to him. He said, if you, what did he say? If Shelby gets a black eye and you're not in the ICU, I'm gonna kill you.
Oh, okay.
So
Got
that's
it.
yeah. So,
But it is good. I mean, I have to give credit to the caller because if you really want to do something and you can prove that you're capable of doing it, the freedom there is, it's an amazing place to start your career. It's an amazing place to work. And I think that makes it really different from a lot of other media companies.
So the reason I ask is just to, get your sense of where we are now. Curious if you have any, understanding of or any perspective and experience with prior years. But we've seen a bunch of these articles, a bunch of these tweets. They're threatening to riot over Amy Coney Barrett. They're threatening to riot just, again, because of Louisville, because of Breonna Taylor. Now, Jack Posobiec tweeted that there's, Kenosha is preparing an announcement. We'll see what happens. Some people think it's about Kyle Rittenhouse. I doubt it. It's probably about the officers not getting charged or something. Personally, based on that news alone, I kind of feel like it's gonna kick off. I mean, they're threatening it for a variety of reasons. So I guess my question is, do you agree? And do you guys see this getting worse over the next couple of months? Like, are we gonna see more Kyle Rittenhouse situations?
I mean, I don't want to say like it's going to get worse, but to be honest, I think it is from what I've been seeing, just because the country's so divided. And then like I feel like the election is just going to like send this thing overboard. One big thing for me that I kind of keep telling people is, whether if Biden wins, the right's not going to accept it. If Trump wins, the left's not going to accept it. And we're just in a crazy time. The Women's March, like I said, moved up their event to October 17. Usually they wait till after the election. And, I don't know what's going to happen, but it definitely seems that it's not getting any better. I mean, from what I've seen on the ground, it's definitely not getting any better. What do you think, Shelby? I don't know. I
would agree. I think your question about if there's going to be more Rittenhouse situations, you hope not, of course. I think that there's a definite, something to be said, 17-year-olds with whatever. I'm not a gun person.
What did he have? A 223?
The big.
Was it an AR-15?
Yeah, the AR-15 going into these very volatile situations where things can change at the blink of an eye. Like you're not trained for that. You know what I mean? And if you want to go and whatever reason he had for being there, will we see it again? Again, you hope not. But can I say no? Of course not. I can't predict the future, but I do think that there will be riots. I think there's been ups and downs all this year, and we'll see an up again.
And I think we're starting to see kind of a portion of America that is getting really sick and tired of seeing their cities destroyed, and it's getting to a point where they're saying, if I have to pick up a gun and I have to go out there and do it myself, then I will. And that's what that Kyle Rittenhouse situation was.
And that's dangerous.
Yeah, and I think it's it's not a good precedent for our country to be in. We'll see what happens, but I mean, when we have the destruction that we're seeing, you're going to have a portion of people who feel like they are not protected and they have to do something for the community, and we're going to continue to see that until we see some type of law and order restored, hopefully coming into this new year with this election. But like I said, I don't think so.
What do you think, Richie?
Yeah, what I think is that what I've noticed is an ongoing theme from across all these protests, and we were talking about this yesterday, is that the individuals who are out there, everybody has a cause, right? And the ones who are actually engaging in the violence are perhaps the most lost in terms of how much they're putting into it and how much they hate, for example, law enforcement. So what we saw in Kenosha was basically two different sides that had causes that they really believed in. And in a situation where there's no law enforcement, well, they were close, but clearly they weren't, doing their normal jobs. They were doing riot control. They weren't, trying to keep, obviously, Kyle Rittenhouse from...
What were they doing? They weren't protecting the businesses. The windows were getting smashed. The fires were starting.
Well, I think that actually comparing DC's riot control to Kenosha, I mean, DC is literally, they're babysitting that crowd the entire time that they're out marching. And there's a little bit of irony there that, the cops are stopping the traffic for the protesters who want to stop the traffic to keep them safe. But in Kenosha, that was not the case. And that's what I'm saying is that
the first or the second night, because the first night we weren't there. That's when things really popped off. The second night was when everything burned to the ground. The third night was the shooting. And the second night, I think Kenosha was just so unprepared. And it caused these individuals, these armed individuals, to come out in the third night. They were there the second night protecting one gas station, but there was only 3 or 4 of them. And then the third night when the shooting happened, there were double or triple, I would say, that amount.
And the more small cities where that kind of stuff happens, the law enforcement isn't trained for that. And so that's the reason why I'm using DC as an example. And if that just continues to spread across our country, I do think
you guys know that ammo shortages across the country. You can't get 9mm. I mean, I've been out to, I think, 2 different shops, and they got nothing. They got no ammo because everybody. And I was at a shop recently. Guy walks in and he walks up and he's like, "You got 9mm?" And the guy's, "No." And apparently it's like $1 a round now, up from like a dime or something. It's like, it's sold out. What's interesting about it is that, for one, liberals have started buying up guns. These people who normally passively just said, yeah, gun control, all of a sudden they're gun owners, record gun sales. Ammo gets bought up like crazy. So what does that mean for small towns like Kenosha, where law enforcement isn't getting the job done, where we see these district attorneys not prosecuting? That's what I'm worried about, man. I'm worried. I think Kyle should not have been out there. But I think the police should have been out there. I think the rioters shouldn't have been. Like, there's multiple steps we have to clear before we get to blaming Kyle for being, I think, a dumb kid. It's riots shouldn't happen.
It was a failure on multiple ends.
Absolutely. And then finally you get this kid. Now they're smearing him and calling him all these crazy things. I don't think he was being smart. It sounds basically what you guys are saying sounds like he's really dumb, waving the gun, running, like not knowing what he was doing. And apparently it wasn't even his gun. It was given to him by somebody else. So what I see there is, I'm more concerned about the bigger picture than I am him as an individual. The bigger picture is that you're going to get more inexperienced people. They're going to be handed guns. What happens when there's a small town in, I don't know, Pennsylvania? Maybe it's a town of like 30,000 people. So it's not, the biggest town, but it's 30,000 people. And what happens when the rioters show up and then some dude hands a handgun, like, laws be damned, we're not going to take this weapon, and that person's never fired before. It's we can talk about the laws and gun control all day and night, but when it comes to someone marching down your street with a torch or a brick or a Molotov, people are going to be like, I don't care. When people talk about whether Kyle should have had the weapon or not, I mean, the kid picked up the weapon when he's like not legally allowed to have it because he was 17, not 18. What do you think people are going to do? It's you come to that neighborhood, they're going to say, I don't have the luxury of worrying about what comes after with these laws. I have to worry about right now the guy in front of my house with the Molotov. That's what I'm worried about happening.
And we kind of saw that example too when we were in Louisville, Kentucky. There was that moment that I was able to capture with the Middle Eastern business owner, where you just have this huge mob.
Oh, that was what was his name? Fari?
Yeah,
Fari?
Yeah, and I visited him earlier in the day before I even got that video.
Well, so real quick, this is a guy who was like surrounded and was refusing to say Black Lives Matter. Is that him?
Yeah, and the thing was so he has a smoke shop. Then like right there, he's leasing another business that was firebombed the night before. So I showed up when they were still doing an investigation. And he was very, very upset. They don't want to speak to me, and I don't blame him. He just had a business firebomb. And then later that night, me and Shelby are kind of following this crowd. And then that's when we see, I just see this huge, kind of like a mob start to approach him. And then they come up to him and say, does Breonna Taylor's life matter? Does Black Lives Matter? They were trying to get him to say, and he wouldn't say that. He was chilling there with his gun. But even that situation could have ended, bad. I mean, he was cool, calm, and collective. But just we're just seeing those type of examples all across the country where people don't even trust the cops anymore to restore law and order. They have to literally sit in front of their business throughout the whole night if they have to, just to make sure it doesn't, you know,
And
get
all
burnt
it
to the ground.
takes is one person with a gun who doesn't quite know what they're doing or gets frazzled or gets surrounded, and that's literally
And those
all
people
it
were
takes.
kind of charging him. They were kind of getting,
They were
getting
getting
in his face, and
aggressive.
they were yelling at him. So I mean, like I said, you know, thank God he was cool, calm, and collective. But it, like, you know, like we said, if it was another individual who was inexperienced, as soon as people charge up, they
knows?
could already, they're already like, you know,
Yep.
could be gun swinging. So it was just a, you know, crazy moment to capture. And then, you know, when we posted, it's opening Americans' eyes to like what's happening on the ground.
It's crazy to me that in the debates, Joe Biden says Antifa doesn't exist. And it's not just Antifa. It's just, I think the bigger issue is far left extremism. It's crazy to me that you get like from the FBI, you know, right wing and white supremacy are the biggest threats. And I'm like, they talk about the Proud Boys. And, you know, I was saying this earlier. If 300 Proud Boys like started marching around my neighborhood, you know what I would do? I'd do literally nothing. I wouldn't care. Like when the Proud Boys have come out and they're left to their own devices, they just wave little American flags and then get drunk. And then they leave and they yell uhuru or whatever it is they do. If I heard that Black Lives Matter or Antifa was coming, I'd pack up and get out. I'm not going to stick around because we've already seen what happens when they come to your property and threaten you. The cops arrest you. You know, we see what happens to people who panic, not saying it's a good thing, but, you know, think they got to defend their neighborhood. They're going to arrest you. I'm not worried about Proud Boys. Nobody knows who they are. There's not even that many of them. But the far left unrest has been everywhere. I got a call from a friend in the far west Chicago suburbs, dinky, tiny little town. Yep, they showed up, and they didn't even live there. That's scary. So then you see in the debates, Joe Biden won't denounce it. Joe Biden's campaign staff bailing these people out in Minneapolis. Kamala Harris soliciting donations to bail these people out. I am worried that, you know, right now there's the debate over whose America is this. Trump says, in Biden's America, this is what you'll get. And people laugh and say, yeah, Trump, you're president now. And I'm like, nah, here's the way I see it. They deputized the Oregon State Police in Oregon. They then deputized the Portland Police. So now if you get arrested by the state troopers or the Portland PD, the feds charge you. And that's freaking these people out. That's Trump. Joe Biden, his campaign staff bailing these people out. I'm worried that if Biden gets elected, it's going to be, let's negotiate and figure out what we can do to appease them. Yeah, they might stop rioting because Biden and the Democrats are going to be like, here are the things you've asked for. Like, we're going to give in to your demands. I think if Trump gets elected, he's going to be like, he's going to put on the iron gauntlet and slam his iron fist. But I don't know, man. I don't know if you guys get that political on the issue because I think you're mostly just on the ground reporters and I'm talking, you know, like the politics, but I don't know if you have any thoughts on, you know, like, well, yeah, what do you think about the local government? What do you think about Trump's responses? Do you think they've said Trump's made it worse? Do you guys have any opinions?
I mean, one thing that I could kind of take away is when we were like covering the situation in like Seattle and Chaz, when we go, you know, I'll just, you know, go out to just speak to regular folks in Seattle. Even like one thing I found interesting was like the Trump supporters and the conservatives, they got to a point where they really wanted Trump to intervene and not kind of use it as like a political playground, you know, because Trump will come out and say, hey, well, that's happening in Democrat cities, let them burn. But people forget there's Trump supporters in those Democrat cities who do want, you know, to see their city or state, you know, see the law and order restored. So that's one thing that I took away was folks in Seattle and then conservatives in Portland, they got to the point where they actually want to see Trump like actually come in and do something and not kind of see them kind of bashing their city. So I found that interesting. But, you know, every city is different or every situation is different. I think with the situation in Louisville, I think they wanted to avoid the chaos so bad that they just said, hey, we're going to declare unlawful assemblies like right when curfew occurs and we're just arresting everyone. And hopefully that sends a message. I mean, one thing that I could kind of take away from my jail experience was with the men that I was with is after they were in jail, almost all of them said, we're not coming back anymore. Like, this is it. Like, after being in here, this sucks. And like the people that I met, at least in my cell, were mostly out of towners. So I had people from Indiana, Detroit, and Ohio that were down in Louisville. And almost like 9 out of 10 of them said, dude, we're not coming back after this. Like, this sucks. So I don't know if that's maybe needs to happen in more cities where you just mass arrest these people and just maybe send a message. We'll see if that works. Because I know in Portland, people were getting arrested and getting turned around in like 3-4 hours already out.
Coming right back.
Yeah, so maybe that's what needs to happen. When when I went to Atlanta after Rashard Brooks, it was the unrest was bad because we were at the Wendy's where he got killed, and there was literally, it was a no cop go zone. So the gangsters in that hood ran that Wendy's, and they literally did not let white people in and out. So that was
wait, in Atlanta?
In Atlanta. So that was one of the good times that Shelby and Richie weren't with me, because they probably wouldn't have been even let into the no-go zone.
Whoa.
So
that wasn't reported.
Yeah, and one thing that bothered me when we were in Atlanta was that me and another reporter, Julio Rosas, we were blasting it on social media trying to show people the violence happening in that little section, because it was a no-go zone. The 3 nights that we were on the ground reporting, 2 of the nights shots were fired at the Wendy's, so we were there for that. And it didn't get any traction with any big media or law enforcement. Even the very next week after we were gone is when that 8-year-old girl went to visit that vigil and got shot and killed. And it took that moment for them to say, okay, we're sending National Guard. Same thing at Chaz. We went in there and attacked it, trying to expose it. And then it took 2 people getting shot and killed for something to happen. But it's just been every city's different. I don't know how, what's the correct way to handle it, but it's kind of been interesting just to kind of get that feedback.
One of the first things I asked you guys, I was like, oh, you've clearly got time to be here. We've had for the past 4 months, every day I wake up, I'm like, oh, it's I do a segment in the morning, my morning riot update for everybody. Turn on your car stereos on your way to work and listen about the riots. Because every single night, there have been a couple over the past few nights, and this actually freaks me out. I didn't talk about them because the politics stuff is getting bigger. And I've mentioned before, that's actually a problem because it's normalized. Like the stuff happening in the Pacific Northwest, now it's just like, oh, they're throwing firebombs again. What am I really going to tell anybody? Hey, they threw firebombs again. All right, have a nice day.
I was talking to Richie about that earlier. Actually, we were sort of looking at where the unrest is right now, and I said something like, it's Portland and Seattle, they're not they're not doing this for any reason. It's just violence at this point. It's not like Louisville where they began protesting over the Breonna Taylor the verdict. They're just doing it to cause chaos, and so it's less interesting almost. Because compared to going to Louisville or potentially going to Kenosha next week, depending on what happens.
Wait, is there news coming out?
Well, we don't know what the news is, but
something's about to happen.
Something allegedly is about to happen. Mm-hmm. So that's interesting because it's something sparked it, and in Portland, it's just, I don't know what's sparking it. They got what they wanted, right? The National Guard stood down, and then people, and there's still violence and chaos going on, and
it didn't work.
Well, I agree with that, and I think what Kenosha and my personal experience with Kenosha, really the lesson that I learned there is the degree to which the facts on the ground are being neglected in favor of whatever narrative you want to push. And I think both sides are guilty of that. But specifically, with respect to Kyle, it was weeks before CNN, Washington Post contacted me, and I think part of the reason is because my testimony, it didn't fit what they wanted to put out there.
Wait, so they didn't hit you up hey, you're the witness, you were involved? They didn't talk to you, or what?
I think what happened was basically the Wednesday night after the shooting, I went on Tucker Carlson, and my goal in this is one thing and one thing only, and that's to tell the public, the greater public, not just one echo chamber, what I saw. And I think after I went on Tucker, that really turned off half of the media establishment from what I had to say. And there's actually a CNN report that said that I supported the conservative belief that Rittenhouse acted in self-defense. It said that.
But you never said that.
I said Kyle told me that he was there to protect the small businesses.
Right.
And he mentioned an absence of police. So I wasn't supporting any claim. I'm playing a role here as a witness. So having experienced that, I really learned the degree to which, the facts on the ground can just don't even matter anymore. So I think that's what's different now than previous riots and stuff like that.
I take a look at the press conference held by these doctors over COVID. Breitbart did a live stream of it, and then Facebook deleted it because it was misinformation. But I'm like, but it's just a press conference that was hosted by doctors and a Republican politician.
Yeah.
Why is the news organization being struck down? Your story is similar in the sense that if the narrative doesn't fit, the news organization is, you're a provocateur. You're not a journalist anymore. The moment you say something that steps out of line, like Andy No, all these news organizations say right-wing provocateur. And it's like, what has he done? Other than just like, here's people, here's what they're doing, here's a video of it. Nope, that makes him an activist, a provocateur. And I think part of it, too, has to do with how prominent, Andy started getting. So for those that aren't familiar, Andy No is just, he's a journalist in the Pacific Northwest who covers far-left violence. He calls it what it is. And now that he's gaining more and more followers as he's, publishing a lot of this information and exposing what these people are doing, they know now he's so, well known. They say he's a right-wing provocateur. I don't know of any right-wing groups that he's a part of. Like, he's not partisan. He's not talking about voting for Trump. I think he said that he's like center-right politically or something to that effect, but that erases his identity as a journalist, and that's it. I don't know if you guys can even comment on this, like why it is that you think the media is downplaying or even protecting the extremists that are causing the violence.
I just off the bat, I would say maybe it has to do something with it, doesn't protect their side, doesn't fit the narrative for their side. It's hard to tell. But like how we said, we try to be out there, try to get the full scoop, show you guys everything, and then let you decide. It's difficult to understand. I mean, one thing that bothered me was that thing in Kenosha where, I didn't even see any like reporters talking to the business owners. These people are devastated. Livelihood gone. Who's going to share their stories? We ran into one witness who said a 7-year-old man was beat trying to protect his business, and he still burned. I
saw that video.
Yeah.
Right? And they bashed him over the back of the head.
And to me, it was just like, if you're in media news, why are we not sharing these stories of these? These are Americans just like us. They're in the middle class. They work 9-to-5 jobs. We should be sharing these stories. And I don't know, I'm only been in DC for 4 months, but I don't know if it's like the whole connection of, you always hear the rumors before you move to DC. Hey, don't get too caught up in your DC bubble. Don't forget to us real Americans. And maybe that is a thing where they're so caught up in this DC bubble. They're like, well, hey, I could look out the window and my high rise isn't burning down, so the whole everyone's doing fine.
Oh, dude.
So I don't know if it's that aspect, but to me, I think that's for me just that folks are too elite in media.
Do you remember that tweet from the guy in like Hollywood where he's like, yeah, they're rioting, woo, and then, oh no, the riots are near my house. Stop, go the other way. Go to the poor neighborhood.
You, bro. I've been in DC for 12 years, so I can definitely comment. And I worked at NBC. One of my first weeks there was the Newtown shooting, and that will forever stick out in my head because when you have people who sit in these multi-million-dollar studios and they talk about these human tragedies day in and day out, I think there's a certain callousness that you develop. And having experienced that human suffering firsthand, literally having Rosenbaum dying in my arms, I am now so much more aware of the actual suffering that is taking place as a byproduct of what's happening in our country right now. And that's not just in the riots. That's why are these people mad in the first place? Why are they going out there and so desperate to, tear down the fence around the federal courthouse in Portland? And the answer is it all starts with the economics. And our generation, I'm 31, and I won't say how old Shelby is. She's very young.
27.
But our generation,
no shame.
We've talked about this extensively. We're one of the first, probably the first generation of Americans who are inheriting an America that's less prosperous than what our parents grew up in or entered their professional lives in. And I think there's a profound disillusionment that's happening in 20-somethings and millennials, and I think that's the real root. And nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to talk about the mental health or opioids because if it bleeds, it leads. You know what I mean?
I think it's a lack of purpose. No one's got anything to do. No one knows why they're here. Yeah.
We've talked about that a little bit too. Like these groups, it almost seems like they don't know who they are, what they want, and this is a community for people.
Yep.
As strange as it sounds, it's a team. It's something to fight for and belong to, and I think that the media. I think also it's so divisive these days. Like with Trump, if Trump says something, I think, and this does not mean I am pro-Trump or anything. You know, I'm very non-political, but you can just see it. You don't have to be political to see that if Trump says something, many people in the media just automatically go to the other end of the spectrum.
In the most extreme way.
So what has Trump done? He has called out these violent riots. He has, used them. He has spoken about them. And so the media downplays them. And I think that is definitely a part of it as well.
So Trump needs to come out and support Antifa for them to finally crack down on the riots. Antifa is great. They're the best. I love what they do. Trump is supporting violent extremists, people. And then they go full capitalist. Trump just announces he's a communist. And then they
Perfect.
I mean, that is an ongoing joke from the Babylon Bee. It's like other satire sites. Whatever Trump says, they say the opposite.
Yeah, impeachment.
But one thing I actually kind of wanted to mention, kind of piggyback what they were saying too, is, being on the ground and just striking some conversations with folks. I think it's that too, is the lack of purpose in their life. I think a lot of folks that I've met, they kind of see this as a moment of revolution.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of fills that void. I mean, one thing that I would be more interested in if I could have a chance to sit down is just, finding more about these people's family lives. I think that one thing that we don't talk about in media and politics is just having a strong family structure is a big deal in our society. And I think we shouldn't shy away from that conversation. We should be speaking about it, especially in 2020 and a time like this. We should be talking about family again. That's just me.
Yeah. We're going to jump to Super Chats. You guys ready?
Yes, sir.
Audience commentary. Most of it has nothing to do with what we're talking about,
Anything, yeah.
But we'll see where we go. For instance, Bobby Lane says Alex Jones should be Joe Rogan's co-host for all his future podcasts. Spotify would love it. It would also be great for both of them to moderate LMAO.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Like, get on board with that.
Morgan Lippincott says there's a petition by Notre Dame students asking the university president to resign. He was seen breaking the school's social distancing rules at the ACB nomination ceremony, and once on campus in August, students can be expelled for breaking said rules.
Yep.
Wow.
Interesting. I'll also mention right now, too, if you guys want to actually ask questions, we got the DC Riot Squad. So you guys, look, if you want to ask a question about the riots, these are the people who are on the ground covering all of it. So they have the answers for you. This is your chance. And also smash that like button. Mm-hmm. Leor Engelstein says, this is for Richie. Send my message from earlier, Tim. I don't know which one that was.
That's Leor from
to Tim.
Full Conceal. He
Okay, right on.
Yeah. What's up,
Is
Leor?
he saying for you to send him?
Yeah, I told you
to
earlier
me.
about the thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Ah, yes,
Thanks.
top secret.
We
Top
don't
secret.
want to. We don't want to tell people what you're packing.
That's right.
We're talking about guns, by the way.
Oh, gosh.
Tony says, hi, Tim. I very much like your videos, but I think you might be misinformed on Turning Point. I work for Turning Point, and we go to college campuses to talk about capitalism versus socialism, big government versus small government benefits of Bill of Rights. I guess. No, I made a comment about it earlier, so, I respect. Let's see. Captain Deplorable says, Tim tells it like it is. Fist bump. Thank you very much. Daniel Sotelo says, why not Joe Jorgensen? I don't know if you guys don't seem very political, but I'll just say for me, she endorsed Black Lives Matter and said we must be actively anti-racist. It's an ideology that's overtly racist. So, I'm not down with that.
Yeah, I'm out.
Yeah. Craig Wadding says, Tim, I heard that Antifa have been buying up all the extra small, and extra small sized bulletproof vests. Ha 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 ha. Tell Bucko I said hello.
Oh, I will tell him.
You guys met Bucko, right?
Yeah,
The
we
cat?
did.
Yeah, there you go.
The best.
Let's see. Joshua says, I think Trump helped Biden by speaking to his pride and allowing him to break focus organically. Shouldn't Trump force Biden to ad-lib for 2 minutes?
Yes, he should have.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Would have been awesome.
Lee Wilson says, your name popped up on Boomer AM radio this morning. Looks like you're going mainstream.
Snap.
Great.
The
Cool.
boomers love you, Tim.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man.
All right, let's see what we got here. I want to see if I can get more questions for you guys specifically.
Everyone loves you.
It is my show.
Early in
It's
the
like,
conversation.
I'm sure there are shows right now where they're like, Tim Pool's a moron. Someone's, I see it like this, I feel like, says vote in person. There we go.
Good
Here we go.
advice.
Brandon Savage says Uhuru means freedom in Swahili. Okay. I didn't know that was, I just thought it was a thing they yelled, but
in
no.
Arabic. How do you?
Was it?
In Arabic, freedom is horiya. So it's.
Do they yell that too or
freedom.
something?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Oh.
the protesting and stuff.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Interesting. Weird. All right, let's see. Sudi Thunder says, your story reminds me of a time in college. Word started spreading that there was a gunman on campus, and as soon as it went from drill to gunman, I was out the window Avoid the pathways using the tree line and got to my truck and GTFO. Despair
Good
Doctor
move.
says, Kyle deserves better. Eagle99 says, Tim, me and my family watch your videos every day and appreciate the viewpoint and truth. You unwind from the games and most of the other media. Be safe and well, man. Appreciate it. Socialism says, why did the female reporter in the room lie about Kyle? He had complete control of his weapon the entire time. Fake news is not what we need, especially when we have video evidence of the truth. Yes, Shelby.
Right.
Yeah, Shelby.
Well,
You weren't there, Shelby.
I was there, and Richie was there, and I think Richie would back me up when I said he did not always have complete control of his weapon.
Well, you can read the criminal complaint. I'm not going to comment on what I said and how that was interpreted by prosecutors. But what you can see on the video, I'm not sure exactly whose video feed it was, so apologies to whoever filmed it. Kyle's running down the street with a fire extinguisher in one hand and an AR in the other at a full sprint. I don't know what fire there was over there, but if it was a dumpster fire, you probably shouldn't be sprinting down the street with an AR-15. in
Well,
the right.
actually, you guys know Drew Hernandez, Lives Matter show. He said, I don't know if this is the same incident, but he said they had lit a dumpster on fire and were pushing it towards a gas station. And the reason they got mad at Kyle was because it was either him or someone who looked like him who put the fire out. So I don't know if this is the same scenario, but maybe if you see three dudes with a flaming dumpster being pushed towards a gas station, you do sprint towards it.
Yeah.
I don't
But
know.
listen, just because he didn't have, I mean, me saying he didn't have control of his gun the whole time does not mean that, I'm not saying that he was,
You're not accusing
just
him.
Yeah,
Right,
it's
it's
just
not
a
accusing.
statement
I have no
based on
opinion either. Exactly.
what
Yeah.
I saw being on the ground, and that's that.
And actually, I told you when he turned around, the gun was aimed 45 degrees at the ground.
Yeah.
And so, as far as the instance of the shooting itself, that's a different story. And so, your friend over there, maybe you can go.
Well,
check out some
everybody has
video.
their opinions.
Check the videos, yeah.
This is interesting. I don't know. Maybe we can fact check this. Mindless FPV says Proud Boys announce lawsuits against CNN and Biden campaign.
I saw Rittenhouse did that, but I didn't
Well,
see the
yeah,
Proud Boys do
Rittenhouse.
that.
Rittenhouse is going to be suing through. Yeah.
Let me Google
with
this.
the white supremacist
Interesting.
claim.
Yeah.
Glenn says, as former military and as a armed security, I give credit to Rittenhouse for his restraint. The last guy he had to shoot, I would have seen him still as a threat, for he still had a weapon. So actually, yeah, like in the video, you can see after all three, after the final shooting of the dude's arm, there's another guy with his hands up, and Kyle lowers his weapon and just gets up and starts walking away. I guess, that I think that, in my opinion, and you guys have to comment on this, but disproves intent to murder.
I mean, I saw him earlier in the night. He's in one of my videos in the background yelling at protesters to, if you need first aid, come here. What we saw that evening doesn't add up with the idea that he came to just shoot people.
Yeah. Royal Raptor says, Kyle went out and protected his community, and you label him as a dumb kid. Tim, he was a patriot that protected his community from domestic terrorists. I don't want to, but I have to do the same, then I will. I totally understand that. And so what I'll say is, I'm not saying, when I say Kyle was a dumb kid, I'm saying he's inexperienced and is coming out not knowing how you handle these situations, how he's supposed to respond. I'm not making a moral judgment. I'm saying we are going to see more people who don't know how to handle a weapon. I'm not saying about Kyle. I'm saying we're going to see more people who don't know how to handle a weapon coming out and saying, if the cops aren't coming, I'm coming. That's why I say, before I get to any criticisms of Kyle, first I criticize the cops. Where were they? Then I criticize the rioters. Why were you burning the city down? Then once we get there, we can talk about, whatever we want to criticize Kyle for. But there's these barriers are in front of that. So, look, if I'm being critical of him, keep that in mind. There's layers to this. If it was like before the riots even happened, the dude shut up and was waving a gun around, I'm going to criticize him. But get out of here. Don't do that. But this was the third night of unrest and riots. So I'm not judging the kid for not being a trained full military whatever marksman lurking in the shadows, knowing how he's going to defend a building or anything like that. All right, let's see. We just got a bunch of super chats just popped up right now. So let's see. Evie says, greatest guest ever, Tim. Does anyone think locals have changed their minds on who to vote for based on riots? Is that something you guys can comment on? Do you have any experience with that stuff?
Yes. Well, we've interviewed people who are moving out of their cities because of what's
Whoa.
happening. Multiple people in Portland, people in Seattle, they're done.
Are they voting
They're
for Trump?
out. I don't know. One of them was voting for Trump, and I
Interesting.
don't think they had in the past. But there are people where they're over this. They're
Yeah.
over it.
I heard a story of some lady in Portland who, like, her store was getting attacked, like, by rioters, and she pulled out a gun. And then she started yelling at the group, "Where are the black people at?" Because it was all white people yelling Black Lives Matter. And it's like, there's crazy stories like that, you know, where locals are just like, nuh-uh, like, you guys are nuts. And they come out, and then, you know, the Trump supporters make the stories go viral because they're kind of like, I don't want to downplay the severity of the chaos, but there's a humor in, like, the absurdity of some of these stories for sure. Bo Stoker says, talk to my local militia about this citation. Watching all the vids. Kyle's discipline was actually quite good. It shows in the videos. Trigger and aim when he drops aim when people retreat. I agree with that 100%. I just think that he's 17, man. He's not like a 35-year-old, you know, fully trained, experienced, you know. Socialism says gun owners are not the issue. To everyone in the room, 99% of all gun crimes are committed by illegal ownership. The overwhelming amount of guns save lives. Anti-gun much?
Hey,
Were we making any anti-gun
I don't
signs?
know what.
I was
what
just
we
in
said.
Wisconsin, and my boyfriend was teaching me how to shoot a gun. So
Yeah.
I'm not anti-gun.
Yeah, no way, man. I got a bunch of guns now. Yeah, stay out of my.
Yeah, I don't know what I said to get
Yeah,
that.
no,
Yeah,
Way to go,
maybe-
Jorge.
Yeah.
Well, maybe
I'll take the blame on this one,
Yeah.
folks.
maybe the interpretation was when I was saying, like,
Yeah.
someone's going to hand their gun and say gun laws be damned, like I'm protecting my community. I think we're going to see a lot of that, and I'm not making a moral judgment. I'm saying I don't want to see it happen. I don't want the cops. We need law enforcement. This is exactly why. But I would not be surprised if regular people just pick up the gun and say, I don't care. I'm not going to sit around and wait for my life to be destroyed. All right, let's see what we got here. DB says, I'm from Brazil, and the radical left in the USA is crazy. Brazilian journalists just digest news from the major American news sources on Twitter. Interesting. Dawson Allen says, after watching the video from Fight Back and following Kyle's case, he was attacked first. He needs to go home. God bless you guys and gals. Interesting. Placid says, hey, Tim, there was a study that shows that concealed carry holders are more law-abiding than government police. All right. See, Sean Anthony says, if someone asked any of you what you think is the best thing they can do to stop these riots, what would you suggest?
It's a tough question.
It's a tough one. I mean, I don't I'm not in law enforcement, so I wouldn't know. But I mean, I'm reading Lyndon B. Johnson's book right now about 1968. So one thing that he did during the race riots is they put troops on the ground, and it seems like when you put troops on the ground, violence deters. So that's all I gotta
But
say.
as an individual person, it's tough. I mean, I don't know the answer to that.
I can speak on where I have expertise, which is in the media. I'm incredibly angry about the way that this entire situation has been treated by the media and the way that it's been downplayed for partisan purposes.
Yeah.
And also, by the way, when we were in Seattle, there was a Fox News reporter coming in there and saying, oh, it's a party-like atmosphere, and then leaving for, to stay So I don't think it's necessarily that it's conservative or Democrat, but it's very much a corporate media narratives that are spun up, and then you have to stick to them because independent journalists will say what they actually think, but people who are working for a massive corporation, I mean, they got corporate overlords who have shareholders to worry about.
Yep.
And I think media is being democratized now, but apparently not as much as it could be because, I mean, our voices are lost. Nobody wants to pay attention to what we're saying at the Daily Caller, that's for sure.
You're the Daily Caller?
Yeah,
you mean,
because
I thought,
we're not establishment.
I thought you
media.
meant you're like bosses were like, just
Oh,
we don't
no.
care what these guys
Yeah.
are reporting on. You mean that the establishment won't hear
Yeah.
you out.
Exactly. So in fact,
Yep.
they'll actively ignore what we're saying, I think.
Yeah.
Bama Bear says, Tim, I must disagree with you on Kyle. I'm a combat veteran. I'm 35. Also, that 17-year-old was more calm than I would have been. He was trained well. Well, to be honest, far be it from me to comment on whether or not someone is trained properly, because I certainly don't know what, a trained SWAT or military member would do in a situation like that. All right, let's see. One Drop says, guests, with the police interactions in D.C. and the other cities you have been in during the riots, how restrained or heavy-handed do you think the police are or have been?
I think in DC the police were very passive. And it has gotten to the point where there's been so much unrest in DC that, people throw 1 or 2 water bottles and that's it. They're moving in. And then Kenosha, I would argue the police were really failed in that situation, and I think they were underprepared.
Small town versus like the likes of DC, though.
Louisville, of course, 2 officers got shot, but I think every night they were declaring an unlawful assembly right when curfew was. I think they were way more aggressive than we've seen in other cities.
Louisville was.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, I do think when we got arrested, the protesters were trying to. It did look like they were trying to disperse. They had walked down the block and were sort of roaming in different directions, and then were not allowed to leave. So I think it really depends on the city. It really varies.
Could that have been because they didn't want these people to go into like suburban neighborhoods or even just other neighborhoods?
I mean, I have no idea. There were about 50 who were corralled in our section, which isn't a huge number when you think about it compared to some of these other places we've been to. But I do think it varies city by city so much.
The tactics too, of the police.
Yeah, what they
Like,
do.
I'm more likely to get tear gassed in Portland or flashbanged, and I'm much more likely to get pepper sprayed in DC.
Right.
And I have, by the way. And actually, I was hit with a tear gas canister in Portland. And
Wow.
the best shot is in between the protesters and the police. So
Yep.
that's where I was. And as Shelby mentioned, we have to dress down a little bit, especially because if we're wearing press and then they know what press we are, it's not going to be good.
Right.
So I kind of just shake my gas mask at this guy who's aiming the canister at me, and he shoots and hits me. And I actually was live on Facebook, and I said things that I couldn't say here right now. And actually, as I'm bending over, he must have reloaded because then I got hit in the leg again.
I think you posted videos.
Yeah,
I think I saw
and
that.
you can go on my Twitter and see it.
that.
But, I don't necessarily blame him in that situation. I was at a riot. I could have just gone home. I was there covering what was happening.
Yeah.
In the midst of it, dressed in black. So
I think New York is actually, for all the complaints people have about the NYPD, I've seen the least amount of heavy-handed tactics from NYPD.
It's funny you say that because we commented when we were there the difference. They don't really rely on anything other than just a good old-fashioned billy club, and I think that goes back to riots from
just locking you up
200
immediately.
years.
They just grab you and get rid of you.
The NYPD does not mess around. So when they cleared people out from the whatever we want to call the protest zone
The
in front of City Hall.
Occupy City Hall.
You were there for that?
Yeah.
Yes, it was brief, but there was some good art and some good music.
Would you
Some
call
good
it a
times.
good old-fashioned billy club?
Yes,
That's exactly it.
I mean, that's literally what it is. And I talked to the NYPD there, and they're like, listen, some Irish guy who says, yeah, my dad did this and my grandfather did this, and they were in this riot and this riot. And so I think actually those tactics, when you actually have just a cop rather than like a shield or something like that, you're less likely to just bump into it because that cop is going to swing back.
That was,
and you know it.
That was wild. I climbed up on the top of a transgender's party bus to get some good footage.
I got yanked off said
he
bus
got
by
yanked
a
off.
big female cop, and she almost pulled. I almost fell right on my back, from like 10 feet up. But
that was not. When was that? When was that?
Months ago.
It was July.
Yeah.
It was early July, very beginning of July.
You know that there's still like a camp in Philadelphia, I guess.
Really?
Yeah, like does the city's just
So check
ignored
it out.
Yeah.
because they're like, they're like, if people want to have a homeless camp, that's not new to the city, so have at it, and like just ignored it,
Crazy.
All right, let's see what else we got. Colin Sanders says rioters seem to be developing more discipline and determination in the face of opposition. Does that square with what you've seen on the ground?
Yes. And we actually, when we were in Louisville last week, some of the organizers were saying, why aren't we doing these things that people in Portland and Seattle are doing? Look at what they're doing, and we're not doing that. So they are looking to these other cities. And Portland is, absurdly, militant with their, they have tactics depending on what the police are throwing at them. They get into these formations. They have weapons or shields. It is very more and more organized the longer it goes on, and it goes out into other cities as well. People are watching.
Right on. All right, let's see what we got here. HydroPX says this dude in yellow said it's about family, but how when women are egotistical and want to take the role of the man? Well, I don't know.
Yeah. I don't-
That's a little,
I think it's
You wanna-
2020.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
well,
2020.
true, too.
What?
It's present year.
Nobody out there has like a strong-willed mother. I mean,
Oh,
what's just because?
My mom, I love you, but you're real.
I think
strong-willed.
we were talking about this last night with Jack Murphy about feminism trying to push trying to push everyone towards a kind of middle of the road masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be kind of where the comment is coming from. So you basically have like general masculinity is now associated with toxic masculinity, but then you have women being encouraged to take more masculine roles. So they're basically like pushing everything to a slightly masculine kind of space instead of recognizing the contributions of femininity to society.
Yeah, and I think part of femininity is also being strong. And I don't know about like you guys, but your parents very much are two parts of a whole, and there are definitely feminine characteristics that my dad had that my mom didn't necessarily embody, and vice versa. And so I don't know. I mean, I think just assuming that because it's a masculine characteristic, only a man can embody it, I think that's the mistake there. And that's I mean, Shelby definitely has a strong. I was talking to Shelby's dad the entire
Are you
time that
calling
she
me
was in
masculine?
jail. No, you haven't. No, your dad. I was saying your dad is very, he's very strong-willed, but he's also, he's clearly cares because we stayed up all night calling.
Yeah, I only knew my dad's phone number and my mom's phone number. So.
Well, he also said to me, he said, I said, at least she went down gracefully, and he said, well, yeah, he treated those cops with way more respect than she did me growing up. And then he said, what? And then he said, oh yeah. Well, it's been 6 hours, and now she's hangry, and now we need to be careful.
no. Watch out.
Yeah, I was.
Appreciate that.
Blazing River says, has DC Riot Squad ever heard of the Capitol bombings and riots in the late 60s and 70s? Whether Underground was responsible? You guys know all about that stuff?
Yeah.
I didn't actually.
Oh,
I need
wow.
to research that.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm reading
Yeah.
about the race riots in the 60s.
Yeah, so work your way up to it.
I wonder.
Oh, yeah. Well, I just want to say my parents were in DC in the late 60s, early 70s. And I think the one thing my mom always says about the difference between now and then is the fact that the protesters at the time, I think, were unified in, it wasn't necessarily, specifically Nixon, or, I mean, they were obviously anti-Nixon, but it was the fact that we were overseas in a war that they thought that we shouldn't be engaging in. And things on the home front, I mean, I think there was a lot more idealism there than what we see now.
I love how the modern left kind of just doesn't care anymore about the Middle Eastern wars and the peace agreements, and it's crazy to me that like, if I grew up with war being the biggest issue, and I mentioned we were talking a lot about this last night because the liberals just wanted to get rid of George W. Bush. And then as soon as Obama wins, they're like, we don't care anymore.
Yep.
So now we have Trump actually trying to pull our troops out, and they're resisting and fighting against him. I kid you not. I was talking to a friend of mine who said, I was like, do you agree with Trump's position on withdrawing the troops from the Middle East? And then this is a progressive goes, well, I actually was reading this article from, then she names a very famous neocon, about why we need a presence in the Middle East. And I was like, are you kidding me? It's if Trump says it, it's bad. If Trump says it, you can't do it. Rage Mage says, to the guests, what has been the scariest situation you've each been caught in so far while covering these riots?
You want to go first, Shelby?
I think you told your whole story.
I can probably
so
answer.
Richie.
Yeah.
Richie's is probably the shooting.
Thumbs up.
I was really scared when I got arrested because, again, my mom is a prosecutor. I grew up like really fearing law enforcement and like breaking the law, and it was also really scary to be in a cell with people where I knew if they found out where I worked, I had no idea if it was going to get bad, and then as the hours dragged on, I know you're going to get out at some point, but it was nerve-wracking because I didn't understand why, as a reporter, I was still in there. And so that was probably, I don't know if it was, I was frustrated. I was very frustrated. But that was scary. And anytime you get into a situation, which we have, where you're surrounded by protesters and they're, targeting you, that's also...
Yeah, mine's
That's
was
also scary.
Mine's was in Atlanta, with I was reporting alongside another reporter, Julio Rosas.
Oh yeah.
And we were at the at that Wendy's where Rashard Brooks got killed, and I believe it was a Saturday night, and we were actually away from the Wendy's. We were like next to the gas station, right next to it. Me and Julio, we weren't even talking to anyone, and three men from that vigil step up to us armed, and then say, "Are you guys undercover cops?" And we're like, no. And then I had my tactical helmet, strapped to my backpack. And he, the guy points at my helmet. He says, that looks like a police helmet. You guys are undercover cops. He then, the guy Julio that I'm with, he's like, he has, he's in the military, so he has that like military style.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, this guy's in the military. You guys are undercover cops. And then they're all armed. And then they go, if you want to see the vigil so bad, we'll take you. And me and Julio were like, no, we're okay. We're actually gonna get an Uber. No, we're fine. And they're like, no. Let's go. So now 3 armed individuals are taking us into this vigil where no white people are allowed, and basically it's a no cop zone. So people were, like photographers were getting beat up there.
Wow.
And as they're taking us to this vigil, the armed guys are like screaming at other like gang members that they think we're undercover cops. So now you have we're basically getting crowded by all these gang members and all these people. And now we're at the vigil, and me and Julio are lying. We're like, hey, this is our first time here. We'll leave right now. We don't even want to be there, and they didn't let us leave. And then a female steps up and yells at Julio and goes, I seen you guys here yesterday taking pictures and all this stuff. So luckily the guys who like walked us in basically took us out and threatened us. They were like, hey man, you guys better leave this vigil. If we see you again here tonight, we're gonna shoot you guys, all this stuff. And basically me and Julio walked away, and me and Julio looked at each other and said, we're buying our ticket to DC tomorrow.
Yep.
We are done. We are done with Atlanta.
Yep.
Dude, I didn't know that was going on in Atlanta. That's crazy.
Yeah, then that's what I was saying. Literally 1 week later is when that 8-year-old girl got shot and killed at that vigil.
Dude, wow. Well, man, it's been 2 hours. You guys want to shout out your social media so that people can follow you when you're covering the next riot?
Yeah, my Twitter is just Shelby Talcott. It's pretty simple. My
Is it
Instagram
like 2 T's
is
or anything, or
not TALCOTT.
okay.
And then my Instagram is SB Talcott. So
All right.
Blackburn, middle name.
Then my Instagram is Jorge Ventura TV, posting all our stories there. You then follow me on Twitter too at Ventura Report. Obviously live tweeting all that good stuff. You then Mr. Rich McGinnis.
Mine's easy. It's just Richie McGinnis, RICHIE MCGINNISS.
You looked like you weren't sure.
On
You
what?
were like,
I'm quite sure. Yeah.
I look like a what? Oh yeah, no. Well, because it's I'm
What's
Irish.
my
Irish,
social
so-
media again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to
It's
mention
same
anything
on
else
Twitter
before
and
we wrap up or anything?
I mean, I just wanted to say, thank you to you guys because,
Oh, for sure.
Shelby and Richie and I, we've been just really working hard this summer, like trying to get this content out to people, to folks. And we do appreciate, you guys coming on, and I mean, you guys having us come on and share at least our stories and perspective. And hopefully there's other Americans who are maybe looking for this type of media can say, hey, you know what, let's check them out. And because I still think a lot of Americans don't know what's happening on the ground. I still meet people every day who are like, hey, just saw your tweet from Portland, had no idea that was happening. I was like, man, that was like 2 months ago now. But so we just appreciate you guys giving us a platform to share this experience. I think a lot of frontline journalism don't get this opportunity.
Right on, man. And I think it's interesting too. People can hear that you guys aren't overtly partisan.
I think that's great.
But I think people are still gonna try and there's no middle anymore. So they're gonna say, if you're being honest about what's going on on the ground, that means you're gonna be saying things that's gonna make people angry at Antifa. They're gonna accuse you of being right or whatever.
You know what? That's their journey, as my college coach used to say.
Right on.
Silence is violence.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot.
Yeah. Well, everybody else, thanks for hanging out. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Parler at Timcast. Subscribe to youtube.com/Timcast/Timcast News. And, of course, this channel. Don't forget to smash that like button. We'll be back tomorrow at 8 p.m. We'll be hanging out and talking news again. But seriously, all of you guys, thanks. This was great. I really appreciate it. Getting some actual perspective from some on-the-ground reporters. And I'd love to have you guys back because, obviously throughout the next couple of weeks, probably going to get crazy. So if there's ever any, big stories, come on back and we'll talk about it. We'll cover it. But thanks for hanging out. Everybody else who's watching, thanks for hanging out. And we will see you all tomorrow at 8 p.m. live.
Bye, guys.